Chapter 123. Father Nyo. Shunning rummaged through I Ching's storage bag and took out a plate of pastries. Can you tell me about the plot now? You want to know now? Lone Moon rolled his eyes at her. He had wanted to tell her a few times before, but she was never interested. Yes, I'm free now. Chef was going through his tribulation anyway.
Who's that kid?
The big boss villain?
No.
He frowned, as if recalling something. He clenched his fists and said, "He's the male lead in the book."
Oh.
Shunning sat down on the stone table at the side and continued to take out the various pastries that Chef had prepared. As she ate, she gestured for him to continue. "Please start your performance." The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He rolled his eyes at her again. He sat down and snatched the plate of pastries from her hand. Then he told her about the plot that he had read before. The novel that he had read back then was a cliché fairy tale of love, and it was a sadistic love between a master and his disciple. "Is Chef gay?" Shunning suddenly asked. Lone Moon spat out the pastry that he had just put into his mouth. "Gay your ass. What are you thinking about? Can't you restrain your Fujoshi soul?" Lone Moon glared at her. The master and disciple in the plot refers to Ningzi and his disciple. It does not include your disciple, Chef.
Oh.
Disappointment. Lone Moon poured a glass of water before continuing. The novel started from the female lead's point of view. She was originally a mortal who got involved in a battle between demons and immortals. She accidentally came to the upper realm and became an innocent bystander. Ningzi happened to pass by and save her. At that time, Ningzi was no longer the weak child he was now. He was already an exalted immortal and was about to become a young emperor. His reputation in the immortal realm was also very high. After he brought the female lead back, Ningzi, and found out that she had a special constitution, she would mysteriously attract some unclean things. For example, Qi that had been sealed, demonic seeds that had been suppressed, or evil spirits that had already dissipated. Puzzled, the male lead divined for a while, and only then did he find out that she was born with a Yin spirit body. She was an existence of extreme Yin and extreme cold, so it was extremely easy for her to attract these things. Therefore, since she was born, she often encountered all kinds of bad luck and stumbled to survive until now. Ningzi couldn't bear to see her like this, so he decided to take her as his disciple. In the novel, Ningzi was described as a high-definition immortal who was not good with words, but focused on cultivation. He was an otherworldly and abstinent immortal. At first, Lone Moon did not understand why the male lead, who had always been focused on improving his cultivation and did not want to be disturbed by external affairs, would so easily accept the female lead as his disciple. But after the incident with the Chu Shuangqiu and combining it with the plot, Ningzi probably felt that he and the female lead were in the same boat. They were both burdened by their natural constitutions, so he wanted to take her as his disciple. However, the following plot was very cliché. It was nothing more than the female lead having feelings for the male lead, but due to their master and disciple status, she could not confess. Like all master-disciple novels, the main point of the novel was, "Master has abused me hundreds and thousands of times, but I will treat Master like my first love." Moreover, every time the female lead was abused by the male lead, when she was in trouble, there would always be male pairs. In any case, as long as it was a male creature, with just a glance at the female lead in the crowd, they would be able to instantly discover the beauty of the female lead and then fall in love with her without hesitation. But the male lead was blind. After a series of misunderstandings and misunderstandings, abuse and abuse, the male lead finally recovered from his blindness. He broke through all the obstacles and finally got together with the female lead in the evil Mary Sue story. Originally, the two of them could do whatever they wanted. It had nothing to do with others. But the worst thing was the male lead and the female lead had a natural tendency to throw the blame away. Apart from characters in the plot, anyone who got close to them would instantly become the scapegoat. The male lead said, "You are only my disciple, just like the other disciples in the sect." And so, the other disciples were destroyed. The male lead said, I have no feelings for you. Even if I do, it is only familial love. And so, the Bao family fell. The male lead said, I want to protect the sect and have no heart for love. And so, the sect was destroyed. The male lead said, I only want to protect all living beings in the 3 realms in this life. And so, the gates to the demonic realm opened. In short, the 2 of them had enough cannon fodder to surround the entire immortal realm. That's roughly what happened in the plot. Lone Moon finished in one breath and poured himself a cup of water from the teapot. Oh. Shenning nodded and glanced at the man who was pretending to be calm. Suddenly, she asked, what happened between the female lead and the male lead? Before he could drink a mouthful of water, he spat it out. His expression changed, and he said with some panic, what else could have happened? Isn't it just a matter of who likes who? Are you sure? Why would I lie to you? Then why are you blushing? I'm too hot. Oh, I already said it's not a sensual story. Keep your doubtful wavy lines to yourself. Anyway, you just have to remember that these 2 people are pathogens. Whoever offends them will be unlucky. In the end, the 2 of them got together happily. Those cannon fodder who have cultivated for tens of thousands of years are all unlucky, Lone Moon said seriously. Nothing good will come out of getting involved with the male lead. Who knows, the entire invincible sect might be implicated. What about Chef? Shenning asked. He had said so much, but she did not see Chef appear. He only appeared at the last moment of the novel. At that time, the gates to the demonic realm were already open and the demons were attacking the immortal realm. In order to save the male lead's disciple, he used all his cultivation to forcibly close the gates to the demonic realm. Lone Moon frowned and said, so the most miserable of all the cannon fodder is that gate so hard to close? Shen Ying looked curious.
Huh.
Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Was that the point? Were you even listening to the plot? What is it made of? Is it very heavy? Why do you care if it's heavy or not? The point was that I Ching must not take the male lead as his disciple. Otherwise, the invincible sect would be no match for the male lead and the female lead. I see that Chef is usually quite strong. What does this have to do with being strong? Then why is it so hard to close the gate? Your plot is very problematic. Is that an ordinary gate? That's the gate to the demonic realm. Do you think anyone can open and close it? Lone Moon glared at her and said, the demonic chi alone can corrode the body of an immortal. It must be very special to be able to block the gate of the demonic race. Is there a lot of demonic chi on the gate? Of course. And it's tall and big. It looks especially heavy. That's a must, right? Is the word demonic realm written on it? Maybe. There are 2 rings on the gate, and the things holding the rings are red-eyed toads. What red-eyed toads? The more she said, the more ridiculous it became. Lone Moon turned and rolled his eyes at her. Do you think it's a television prop? You make it sound so real. Have you seen it before? I have. Shenning nodded.
What?
Holy shit. Chapter 124. As I Ching had jumped 3 levels in a row, 10 days had already passed since the heavenly tribulation. His cultivation level had also risen from the original Earth Immortal to the Stygian Immortal level. His cultivation was second only to Bao Yi of the Bo family. In addition, he was a sword immortal, so he was stronger than immortals of the same level. In a real battle, it was normal for him to challenge someone of a higher level. He was thinking about his master and wondered if the food he had prepared was enough. After adjusting his condition, he flew back to the sect. As soon as he entered the mountain gate, he happened to meet 2 people who were flying towards him. You're finally better. Come, let's go to Chu Shuang City. Lone Moon waved at him, pulling Shenning with him. Master this. I Ching hesitated. Didn't they just come back from that place? Let's go first. I'll explain to you on the way, Lone Moon said hurriedly, intending to fly on his sword again. I Ching did not ask any more questions. He summoned his flying sword, thought for a moment, then reached out to pull Shenning back onto his own sword. Then, he flew up into the air and headed towards Chu Shuang City. What happened to Chu Shuang City? He asked as he rode on his sword. Do you remember the demon who barged into the city? Lone Moon asked in a low voice. Do you know how he escaped? I Ching frowned. Thinking back, Ningzi and's primordial soul sword Qi had exploded, and Bao Yi was distracted. The demon took the opportunity to escape, and then it disappeared into thin air, and so did the devil Qi. Such a huge amount of devil Qi disappeared just like that. After that, City Lord Bao searched everywhere, but did not find any traces of the devil clan. How did he do it? No matter how hard he tried to escape, it was impossible for him to escape so cleanly. Because of the gate to the demonic realm, Lone Moon said in a low voice. That gate is in Chu Shuang City. The demon world, I Ching exclaimed. I've already informed City Lord Bao 10 days ago, but even after searching the entire city, they still couldn't find the door. Lone Moon continued. That's why, just in case, we waited for you to finish your tribulation and go take a look together. How do you know about this? I Ching asked. Although everyone knew about the existence of the demon world, no one had actually been there. How could it appear in the remote Chu Shuang City of the immortal world? This is a serious matter. Are you sure it's the gate of the demon realm? I'm not sure. Lone Moon pointed at Shining. She saw it. I Ching's expression suddenly changed, and he said with a look of determination, that is definitely the gate to the demonic realm. That's right. Lone Moon. Motherf asterisk Kerr. The three of them flew at top speed and passed through several teleportation arrays before arriving at Chu Shuang City. Coming to this immortal city again, it was obviously different from the last time. The city seemed rather deserted, with only a few immortals entering and exiting the city gates. When they arrived at the City Lord Manor, Bao Feiping was already waiting at the entrance. Fellow immortals, you've finally arrived. His face lit up, and he cupped his fists politely. His gaze fixed on I Ching, and he was shocked. Immortal I Ching, your cultivation. 10 days ago, he was still an Earth immortal. How did he suddenly become a Stygian immortal? I Ching nodded, and returned the greeting. I still have to thank the City Lord for bestowing the treasure that day. Bao Feiping looked at Lone Moon in disbelief. Although the 9 Heavens Billion Mirror contained half an immortal meridian of immortal Qi and could indeed allow one's cultivation to improve by leaps and bounds, but wasn't this a little too much? He felt a little conflicted, but he quickly thought of the important matter at hand and regained his composure. He hurriedly invited the three of them in and said in a low voice, that day, when we received Brother Lone Moon's message, we conducted an investigation in the city. Although we did not find the gate to the demonic realm, we did find something unusual. Bao Feiping raised his hand and conjured a map of the city in the air. He pointed at it and explained. Ever since that demon had set his sights on Immerse, they had conducted similar investigations before, but they had never found any problems.
It was the same this time.
They did not find anything related to the demon race in the city, much less any remnant demonic Qi. But the gate to the demonic realm was a serious matter. It concerned not only Chu Shuang City, but the entire immortal realm. After receiving the same results, his father Bao Yi was still worried and went to check it out for himself. With one look, he found some small problems. There are a few places in the city where the immortal Qi seems to be thinner than other places. Bao Feiping pointed at a few places on the map. Originally, there were many immortals in the city. There were often people cultivating and meditating, so it was normal for the immortal Qi to be thinner and thicker. But after the demon race's invasion, many immortals left the city. Logically speaking, this city was above the immortal meridian, and there were no immortals absorbing the immortal Qi there, so the immortal Qi should be thicker. But now, the immortal Qi seemed to be avoiding those places on purpose. What's more, we discovered that there are many places like this outside the city. Almost every few hundred feet, there would be a place like this.
Why is that?
Could it have something to do with the gate to the demonic realm that Brother Lone Moon mentioned? Lone Moon frowned. The only thing that could make the immortal Qi retreat was something from the demonic realm.
Shining.
He turned to look at Shining. Where exactly did you see the gate to the demonic realm? That building. Didn't I mention it before? Weighty building? Bao Feiping interrupted. Yes, just before you guys arrived. Shuning pondered for a moment, then added. It disappeared in a flash. Before they arrived, in other words, it was when the demon had escaped? He had escaped straight back to the demonic realm. Was that why he disappeared so cleanly? But they had already checked the weighty building many times. In contrast to the other strange places, that was the place where the Bao family's immortal qi was the thickest. City Lord, why don't you bring us there to take a look? Lone Moon suggested. There were some things that they could not see, but Shuning could. Bao Feiping nodded and led them to the side yard. Lone Moon checked the place where Shuning had mentioned the gate to the demonic realm more than 10 times. Just as Bao Feiping said, there was nothing strange. They then went to the city to check all the places where the immortal qi was different. Still, they could not find anything. My father has already gone to the capital to report this matter, Bao Feiping said. If it really was the gate to the demonic realm, their small immortal city would not be able to make the decision. Lone Moon nodded. He checked again, but there was still nothing. He started to wonder if Shuning had been seeing things that day. He nudged the person beside him. Hey, did you find anything? I found something, Shuning replied. Oh.
What?
Lone Moon was shocked. Even Bao Feiping turned to look at her in shock. What did you see? The gate. Holy shit, you really found the gate to the demonic realm? Where is it? Shuning pointed to the ground. Here. Everyone looked at the ground. There was nothing beneath her feet. There was nothing there? That and that. Shuning pointed in a few more directions. All of them. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. What do you mean? Was the gate to the demonic realm a mouse hole? Was it everywhere? Where exactly is it? Can you explain? Shuning sighed. She suddenly turned to I Ching. Chef, bring me up. I Ching did not hesitate. He flew her up on his sword. They flew higher and higher until they were thousands of meters above the ground. Then, she pointed down and said to Bao Feiping and Lone Moon, who were flying up with her. This. The two of them looked down and instantly understood. Their faces paled.
Damn.
Chapter 125. They could see the entirety of Chu Shuang City below. Above the immortal meridian, Chu Shuang City was shrouded in immortal qi. Outside the city, however, the immortal qi was thinner. From above, Chu Shuang City looked like it was protruding. What stood out even more was its shape. Originally, immortal cities did not have a fixed shape. If one wanted to stay in the city for a long time, they could build a house in the city with the city lord's permission. That was why the city was very spacious. However, looking down from the sky, the entire Chu Shuang City had become squarish. It was as though it was an immortal city that had been measured. There was not a single inch more than it was. What's more, the biggest street in the city was right in the middle, dividing the city into two perfect halves, the east and the west. He didn't notice it in the past, but now that he had flown so high up, he realized that the entire landscape of Chu Shuang City looked like a door. A huge door. Bao Feiping thought back to the places where the immortal qi was different. He compared them to the nails on the door. City Lord Bao. Lone Moon suddenly asked, is there a way to hide the immortal qi temporarily? Or an immortal artifact that can see through the immortal meridian? See through the immortal meridian? You mean? Bao Feiping's heart sank. A terrifying thought came to him. He nodded hurriedly. Yes. The sky-shrouding art will do. With that, he conjured a seal with both hands. With a wave of his hand, a human-faced water mirror appeared in front of the four of them. They looked down through the water mirror. All the immortal qi in the city had disappeared. There was a silver immortal meridian flowing in the city. After a while, the immortal meridian faded away, revealing what was inside.
It was a thick black.
Just as Shuning had said, it was a huge black door. There were two red-eyed toad rings on the door. Demonic qi swirled around it. Just by looking at it through the spell, one could feel the cold and sinister aura seeping into their bones. The door to the demonic realm. Bao Feiping's hand trembled. He did not even manage to maintain his spell. The water mirror in front of him broke into pieces. His heart was in a mess. All the things that he could not figure out before suddenly became clear to him. Why did the demons suddenly disappear? Why could he not find any traces of it anywhere? Why could it easily break through the demon-breaking array outside the city and enter the city lord's abode? It turned out that there really was a gate to the demon realm. It wasn't located somewhere in Chu Shuang City, but the entire Chu Shuang City itself was the gate. It was true that there was an immortal meridian in Chu Shuang City, but this immortal meridian was actually the seal of the door to the demonic realm. Bao Feiping broke out in a cold sweat at the thought of this. His face turned even paler. Brother Lone Moon, this is a serious matter. I have to inform my father as soon as possible. Now that the door had been found, it wasn't enough to just report it to the capital. They had to let Jun Shang know as well. Please go ahead, City Lord. Lone Moon nodded. If there's anything you need, just say the word. My invincible sect will do our best to help. Thank you. Only then did he fly down to arrange the follow-up work. Lone Moon lowered his head and looked at Chu Shuang City once again. Although the gate to the demonic world did not show any signs of opening, the demonic chi surrounding it was already very shocking. Especially those spots where the immortal chi was thin. It was obvious that the immortal meridian was about to be unable to suppress the demon sect. The demon race that had barged into the city lord's mansion might have been a small fry that had found a loophole, or it might not even have a complete demon race body. Chu Shuang City was no longer suitable for immortals to continue cultivating. If the immortal meridian in the city got weaker and weaker, the gate to the demonic world would appear one day. It looked like Bao Feiping was going to be very busy. However, he was not worried that the gate would open now. After all, according to the plot, opening the gate required a huge price. Moreover, it required the demon race's bloodline. After that, Bao Feiping was really busy. First, he closed the immortal city, only allowing people to leave and not enter. He also informed Bao Yi, who had gone to report the situation. Now that the gate had been found, what to do next was not something they could interfere with. Lone Moon did not stay for long. He found the gate and returned to Invincible Sect. 3 months later, Lone Moon's mouth twitched as he looked at the 3 people who had suddenly appeared at the table in front of him. He almost dropped the basket in his hand. He had only gone out to pick up some spring onions. What the hell happened? Where did these people come from? Brother Lone Moon. Bao Feiping was overjoyed. He smiled brightly and welcomed them. Long time no see.
How are you?
City Lord Bao. Lone Moon glanced at them. You guys, it's all because of the gate to the demonic realm. Bao Feiping sighed and explained. After I reported the matter, Emperor Goyu personally came to Chu Shuang City to check it out. He confirmed that it was indeed the gate to the demonic realm. As a precaution, the whole of Chu Shuang City has been sealed.
Sealed?
What about the gate? I'm not sure about that. Emperor is the person with the highest cultivation level in this country. He's also an immortal emperor. There must be a way to solve this, right? Bao Feiping guessed. Lone Moon frowned. He was not so optimistic. The plot of the book did not mention anything about a way to solve this. After Chu Shuang City was sealed, Emperor promised to give our family another immortal city. However, it will take some time for the decree to be issued. We can't stay in Chu Shuang City. We thought of Brother Lone Moon's invitation last time, so we came here. He had mentioned it casually last time. You're really not polite. You even brought your whole family here. We'll probably be staying here for a while. Will we be disturbing you? No, disturbing. What was the point of saying that? You're all here. He silently glared at a certain someone who only cared about eating. Then, he strode into the kitchen and greeted Bao Yi, who was on the other side of the room. He brought a bag of scallions into the kitchen. I just realized that Invincible Sect is a good place, Bao Feiping said with a smile. Your disciples all have their own strengths. Compared to Chu Shuang City, this place is much livelier. City Lord Bao, you flatter me. Lone Moon's smile deepened. He put on a business-like expression. The two of them began to flatter each other. From time to time, Bao Yi, who was carrying his grandson, would join in. Shuning was not interested in all this. She focused on eating her food. After taking 2 bites, she felt someone staring at her intently. She turned around and saw Ningzi, and looking at her with a pair of black grape-like eyes. His eyes were full of curiosity. When he saw her looking at him, he paused for a moment. Then he gave her a smile as bright as the sun. He turned to look at a piece of pastry on the table. He looked eager to try it. "Do you want to eat it?" she asked. Ningzi and looked at the pastry, then back at her. He frowned and seemed to be hesitating. After a while, he could not resist the temptation and slowly nodded. "Oh." Shuning picked up the pastry from the plate and moved closer to his little face. "This is a walnut pastry." Ningzi An's eyes lit up. Just as he reached out to take the pastry, Shun Ying's chopstick spun. The pastry spun in front of his eyes, and with a "ah," she stuffed it into her mouth. It made a series of crisp, crunching sounds. Ningzi, he was completely stunned. His little eyes were red and full of grievance. Shunning smiled at him mischievously. Then, she picked up her chopsticks and took a few bites. She finished all the food on the plate in front of him. Not even a peanut was spared. When she was done, she even burped. Ningzi, he really wanted to cry. He pursed his lips and snorted. Then, he buried his head in Bao Yi's arms and refused to look at her again. Sigh. Bullying children is really addictive. Chapter 126. Shun Ying and Little Ning's actions did not attract the attention of the trio. Perhaps they felt that they had enough of lying, bragging, talking. Lone Moon finally got down to business after receiving a fee that was more than 10 times higher than what he had expected. Exalted Immortal, City Lord Bao, since the Immortal Lord has taken care of the gate to the demonic realm, what do you plan to do next? He did not believe that the City Lord of Chu Shuang City would not come all the way here to stay other than his own residence in the Immortal City. To be honest, because of the male lead, Ningzi, and he did not want to have anything to do with the Bao family. The gate to the demonic realm was an accident. After all, it concerned the entire immortal realm. This time, the Lord bestowed Jingxing City to the Bao family because of our contribution in discovering the gate to the demonic realm. Bao Feiping glanced at I Ching, who had finished cleaning up and was walking out of the kitchen. He continued, "Although Jingxing City is not on an immortal meridian like Chu Shuang City, it is inland and close to the capital city. My father and I feel that the matter of the gate to the demonic realm was all thanks to the three of you, not our contribution. If you don't mind, we would like to invite your sect to Jingxing City and share the immortal city with us." Lone Moon was shocked. He did not expect the Bao family to be so generous. They were the ones who discovered the gate to the demonic realm, but Chu Shuang City was originally the Bao family's territory. Now that it was sealed, it was normal for the immortal emperor to give them a piece of land. Even if he did not mention their role in the matter, no one could say anything. He did not expect that the first thing they did after obtaining the new immortal city was to give them half of it. He was about to ask for more details when he saw I Ching standing behind Shining. He immediately understood their intentions. It looked like they had not given up. I Ching had been an Earth Immortal in the past, but now he was a Stygian Immortal. It was extremely difficult to find another Stygian Immortal Sword Immortal in the entire Immortal realm, much less one with an innate sword embodiment. If they really moved to Jingxing City, they would be in the same city and would see each other all the time. As a Sword Immortal, it would be natural for I Ching to give some pointers to the younger generation occasionally. There would be no need for him to accept disciples or not. Or should he say that these two were really worried about their child's school? In order to find a good teacher, they even provided free housing in the school district. "Thank you for your kindness." Lone Moon refused directly. "Although there aren't many disciples in my sect, I'm used to living here. I have no intention of changing the abode." What a joke. No matter how many benefits there are, it can't compare to having a main character with a constitution that invites trouble. Brother Lone Moon, don't be in a rush to make a decision. You can think about it slowly. Seeing that things were about to go south, Bao Feiping panicked and turned his gaze to the other two people present. "Why don't we ask fellow Immortal I Ching and this fairy's opinion first?" He remembered that this woman was the sect master. Although he could already tell that Lone Moon was the real decision-maker in the sect, for the sake of his son, he had no choice but to drag the other two in. The immortal qi in Jingxing City is much denser than here. It's more beneficial for the cultivation of the disciples in the sect. Not going.
Ah. Huh.
Bao Feiping paused. He had thought that the other party would hesitate for a moment. What the hell was this instant rejection? I'm not moving. Shunning tilted her head. Moving was so troublesome. Master is right. I Ching rejected instantly. Bao Feiping. City Lord Bao, we appreciate your kindness. However, the disciples in my sect are all low-level earth immortals. The immortal qi here is more than enough for them, Lone Moon said. The main reason was that he did not want to have anything to do with the male lead. All right. Bao Feiping knew that there was no point in trying to persuade them otherwise. He could only give up on the idea of asking them to move. Suddenly, he thought of something and changed the topic. Your sect has 2 sword immortals. It looks like your disciples must be extraordinary as well. It's rare for us to have the opportunity to come here. Can you let Father and I broaden our horizons? Now that they had seen each other, they might have to exchange some pointers. Then they could ask Little and to stay in the name of learning from them. City Lord, you've misunderstood. They're not. Lone Moon paused mid-sentence. His eyes darted around as he suddenly thought of a good way to dissuade Bao Feiping. Changing his tone, he said, they're not all sword cultivators, but they're not bad. Yes, very good. Oh, then. Bao Feiping's eyes lit up. Lone Moon nodded and turned to the person beside him. Yu Hong, call see you over. Yes. Only then did Yu Hong turn around and walk out. Not long after, she came back with a delicate and gentle fairy in green. The fairy bowed at the 2 of them timidly. She seemed to be a little afraid of strangers and hid behind them subconsciously. This is our sect's most outstanding disciple. Lone Moon coughed and gestured for Siyu to stand on the other side of the mountain wall. Then, with a straight face, he said, Siyu, exalted immortal Bao, and the city lord want to see your skills. Show them your skills. Everyone's gazes fell on her, especially the Bao father and son. They were even more curious. Was such a delicate fairy also a sword cultivator? And she was the most outstanding disciple. Invincible sect was indeed full of hidden talents. Siyu had always been afraid of strangers. At this moment, she was at a loss of what to do. Subconsciously, she took a step back. Elder Lone Moon, is it here? Yes, dear best, Bao Feiping replied. But that's not good, is it? She glanced at the 2 of them. It's all right. Just do your best. After some thought, he added, if you break anything, it's on me. Siyu was still a little hesitant. The Bao father and son became even more curious. They stepped forward and said, Fairy, don't be afraid. We just want to see what your sect is capable of. That's right. Just practice like you usually do. Don't be so reserved. Siyu was still a little nervous. Shunning also interrupted, Little green sister, all the best. As soon as she finished speaking, the timid Siyu suddenly raised her head. Suddenly, she seemed to be filled with boundless courage. Nodding her head vigorously, she said, Yes, sect master. Once she finished speaking, her eyes narrowed. Immortal qi erupted from her body. Her entire aura changed. No, she really changed. Her muscles bulged, and she grew taller. Her entire body swelled to twice its original size. With a loud "ha," she punched out. The originally solid mountain wall rumbled and scattered the crushed stones on the ground. Dust rose up to a height of 10 feet, and in an instant, it was all over their faces. Bao Feiping. Bao Yi. How the F***ck was this a sword immortal? That's enough, see you. Go back to the martial arts arena and teach your junior sisters. Lone Moon waved his hand at a certain transformed person. He calmly conjured a wind seal and began to clean up the area. Yes, Elder. Siyu cupped her fists and bowed. Then her body transformed again. In an instant, she became that delicate girl again. It was as if her muscles had never been there. Brother. Lone Moon. Bao Feiping still looked confused. Just now, she was a body cultivator? A woman? Alive. And an immortal at that? There had never been a body cultivator in the immortal realm who succeeded in ascending to immortality. Only demon immortals relied on body cultivation to ascend to the immortal realm. What was a body cultivator called? A body immortal? That's right. Lone Moon nodded and chuckled. Didn't I tell you? I Ching and I have no experience in taking in disciples. They became like this as they continued to cultivate. That's why in the entire Invincible sect, apart from I Ching and I, all the disciples are body cultivators. The two Bao family members. Was it too late to take back what they had said? Chapter 127. Ever since Lone Moon had shown his sex strength to the Bao father and son, he had become more and more serious about teaching his disciples how to cultivate. Every day, he personally led over 100 disciples to train in the martial arts arena, shouting all kinds of slogans as they trained. His voice was so loud that it could be heard throughout the entire sect, especially in a certain side hall. Every time the Bao father and son saw this scene, their faces would turn greener. When they found out that the entire Invincible sect was made up of female body cultivators, their expressions became even more interesting. Their eyes were filled with despair. It had to be said that Father Nyo was really going all out in order to dispel their thoughts. The only thing that was hard to explain was why they had so many body cultivators. But it was obvious that the Bao father and son, who had been greatly traumatized, did not think of this. However, it was indeed time for the strength of his disciples to increase. At the very least, they had to grow their immortal bones first. It had been almost half a year since their entire sect had ascended. However, apart from Yu Hong and Siyu, whose cultivation levels had increased tremendously and who were showing signs of forming their immortal bones, Shening and Siyu's cultivation levels had improved tremendously. Though the cultivation levels of the other disciples increased, their foundations were too shallow, and there was no sign of them forming their immortal bones. Only those with immortal bones could be considered as true Earth immortals. It seemed like he had to think of another way. Of course, the most important thing now was to settle the matter of the male lead. No matter what, they could not get involved with the male lead, especially I Ching. Fortunately, the child was still young. These few days, if he wasn't with the Bao father and son, he would be taken care of by Yu Hong. He didn't have much contact with I Ching. Master? I Ching put down the dish he had just finished cooking. It was rare that he did not continue to dive into the kitchen. Instead, he sat down and looked at Shening. These days, have you noticed? And no. Shening shook her head. Wait a little longer. Actually, I'm just guessing. I Ching frowned and said, After all, the child has been fine for 8 years. I'm probably just being paranoid, right? Not necessarily. Shening took 2 mouthfuls of rice and casually replied, I don't know many people. I Ching was shocked. Master means there's no rush. Yes. Wait. Lone Moon interrupted, looking confused.
What are you talking about?
Why can't I understand anything? Were they talking about Ningxian? It was definitely true. I'm talking about your identity as the male lead. Shening replied. What identity? Lone Moon paused. Wasn't he Bao Faping's son? What was there to call him the male lead?
Didn't I tell you?
Shening scratched her head and said, That day, when Chef helped him expel the primordial soul sword chi, he found something else in his body. When did you tell me that? How the F***CK would I know? Suddenly, he had a sullen feeling of being excluded from the world. What's going on? Chef, go ahead. Shening continued to eat. Yes, master. I Ching nodded, then looked at Lone Moon and said, That day, when I helped him expel the primordial soul sword chi from his body, I found that although his sword chi was chaotic, it was not completely out of control. I thought he was too young to know how to suppress it. But when I used my immortal chi to help him remove the sword chi, it went into his dantian very smoothly and didn't encounter any obstruction. This is very abnormal. Lone Moon paused, then understood. You mean if he didn't know how to suppress the sword chi, when your immortal chi entered his dantian, even if he didn't know how to do it, he would have resisted instinctively. If he knew, He wouldn't have allowed the sword chi to explode? That's right. I Ching continued. Not only that, when I was expelling the sword chi, although I didn't feel that he was conscious, he seemed to be cooperating. At the beginning, I didn't encounter any obstruction. But when my immortal chi accidentally swept past his divine perception, I suddenly felt a full force resistance. All the sword chi went berserk. That's why I was invaded by his sword chi, and was injured. Lonmun's heart tightened. Could there be something wrong with his primordial spirit? I don't know. He shook his head. At that time, I was focused on suppressing the sword chi, and didn't look closely. I only felt a piercing chill. After that, I tried to use my divine perception to check, but I couldn't find any trace of it. That's why I asked Master to help me see if there was anything different about him. What's more, the immortal realm was different from the mortal realm. If someone had touched his primordial spirit, the Bao father and son would have been able to tell.
Shit.
Lone Moon couldn't help but curse. The male lead was indeed not simple. Why didn't you tell me something so important earlier? You didn't ask. Then why did you tell Shining? If I didn't ask, I wouldn't have told you, right?
She's master.
Of course. Motherf asterisk Kerr. So he was the only one who was picked up by Invincible Sect? Anyway, that child's primordial soul sword chi exploded probably not just because of the demon's invasion, I Ching said in a low voice. There must be some other reason. I just don't know if the Bao father and son know about it. The more Lone Moon listened, the more confused he became. None of this was mentioned in the plot. Ning Zi, and the main character, was high and mighty the moment he appeared. There was no mention of him having any special status. Later on, he even became a celestial emperor. Could he have missed out on something? I don't care. They won't be able to stay here for long. Lone Moon waved his hand in annoyance. Anyway, remember to cherish life and stay away from the main character. Stay away from them in the future. Don't have anything to do with this Ningxian. Before he could finish speaking, Shen Ying's expression suddenly changed. She put down her bowl and stood up. What are you doing? Lone Moon was shocked. This was the first time he had seen her so nervous. What happened? It's too late. What? Before he could react, a huge explosion came from behind him, and a black object soared into the sky. In the blink of an eye, demonic chi filled the sky, covering the entire Invincible Sect. Demonic chi. Why did so much demonic chi suddenly appear in Invincible Sect? It's the Chongqing Palace in the west. Lone Moon recognized the direction immediately. He looked even more surprised. That's where the 3 people from the Bao family live. Why would it appear there? Chef, let's go. Shining turned and ran in that direction anxiously.
Wait.
Lone Moon reacted quickly and grabbed her. You're crazy. There's so much demonic chi, and you dare to rush in to save them? What's more, the disciples of the sect were all at the martial arts arena, not inside. Who said I was going to save them? Then you dash. There are a few pieces of dried fish hanging there. They were the seafood he brought back last time, the big ones. Chef, save them. Yes, master. No problem, master. Lone Moon. Son of A. B****. Chapter 128. The demonic chi was getting thicker and thicker. Compared to the time in the City Lord Manor, the demonic chi was much thicker now. The sky changed color. From time to time, ghostly wails could be heard coming from within the demonic chi. Many black shadows dashed out, their eyes scarlet red and their faces ferocious. Lone Moon immediately activated the protective mountain array and gathered the disciples. They all retreated to the square in front of the palace, trying their best to protect the disciples within the array. For the 108th time, Lone Moon cursed the main character for bringing trouble to himself. He had only been in Invincible Sect for a few days, but he was really unlucky. Less than 5 minutes after the disciples gathered, I Ching and Shuning returned. I Ching was carrying a person in one hand, while Shuning was carrying a fish in the other. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. This guy really went to collect dried fish. The few of them walked into the array. I Ching put down the person in his hand. It was the Bao father and son duo. They looked as if they had suffered a huge blow, their faces full of disbelief. Especially Bao Yi, who seemed to be seriously injured. What happened to the two of you? Lone Moon asked as he helped them up. I Ching frowned and looked at the two of them. We guessed wrongly before. The gate to the demonic realm in Chu Shuang City was just a cover. The real gate to the demonic realm had been moved a long time ago. It's not in one place, but in Ning Zi's body. He himself is the gate.
What?
Lone Moon exclaimed. Holy shit! Wasn't the male lead from a righteous sect? Since when did he become the villain? This was getting out of line. You're saying that the demonic chi was released by him. He's a demon too. No. Little N is definitely not a demon. Before I Ching could answer, Bao Feiping snapped out of his daze. He was indeed an immortal fetus when he was born, but we don't know when a demonic seed was planted in him. Bao Feiping's face was full of self-blame. The key was that they had not noticed it for so many years. Sigh, it's our fault. Bao Yi also sighed. Little N was already planted with a demonic seed. The demon who barged in earlier must have seen through this. That's why he transferred the gate to Little N. He wanted to lure him into becoming a demon before opening the gate. Wait. Lone Moon was confused. You mean to say that the gate to the demonic realm can be transferred? That's right. Bao Yi nodded. He sounded both worried and guilty as he said, We didn't know about this. That's why we brought him away from Chu Shuang City. Without the immortal meridian suppression, an heir's demonic chi invaded his body and caused him to explode. It's all our fault for implicating your sect. Lone Moon really wanted to curse now. Alright, there's no point in saying all this now. Why don't the two of you think of a way to solve this situation? The entire Invincible sect had turned pitch black. Other than where they were standing, there was demonic chi everywhere. The two of them looked at each other and shook their heads. The demonic chi has cut off our connection with the surrounding immortal chi. I'm afraid it will be very difficult for us to break through. Besides, he didn't continue. With so much devil chi, if one or two more demons came out of the devil world, they would definitely die. Their only hope was immortal Emperor Guyu, who was still in Chu Shuang City. However, there was no way for them to send a message. Did you see the Demon Realm Gate? He asked. I saw it. It's quite big. Before the two of them could reply, Shening pointed in front of them. Lone Moon looked up. Indeed, in the black fog in front of them, a huge black gate was rising. It was getting bigger and bigger. It was exactly the same as the gate they had seen in Chu Shuang City a few months ago. Little Lin, Bao Feiping suddenly called out anxiously. Lone Moon then noticed that there was a child standing in the lower left corner of the gate. It was Ning Zian. However, unlike his usual obedient self, his face was covered with demonic scars and his eyes were bloodshot. He pressed one hand against the gate and looked down coldly. This was the male lead? This was clearly the appearance of the villain, the big boss. What's wrong with him? Lone Moon asked. He's been invaded by the demonic seed in his body. He's become a demon, I Ching replied. Indeed, in the next moment, the demonic chi around Ningzi's body became even more intense. Following a few shrill cries, the demonic chi started to attack the ground. I Ching rushed out with his sword. The sword chi in the sky immediately dispersed the demonic chi. Ningzi and laughed coldly, as if he didn't care about the people below him. He only glanced at them before turning his attention back to the huge door. Suddenly, he made a cut on his left palm and pressed it against the red-eyed toad on the door. You're right. You're right. Oh no, he's going to open the gate to the demonic realm. Stop him. Lone Moon was shocked. He instinctively turned to look at Shening and said, Shening, knock that little brat down.
Oh.
Shening grunted in response. She looked left and right, but couldn't find any weapons, so she could only pick up the huge dried fish in her hand and throw it into the air. Everyone felt a strong gust of wind sweep past them. Following that, there was a loud bang. Ningzian, who had just been about to open the gate, was slammed into the gate. Even the demonic qi around him dissipated. However, the heavy pressure did not disappear. Instead, it carried with it an unstoppable force as it continued to push forward. There was a creaking sound, and the originally unmoving door rumbled. Ningzi and fell down along with it. The door it had opened. Shining, I Ching, Lone Moon. Father, Nyo, would you believe me if I told you that it was because the quality of the gate was too poor? How could the gate be opened with a single slap of dried fish? Like hell I'd believe that. He was doomed. He had tried so hard to stop the gate from opening, but it had been slapped open by a single slap of a salted fish. How was he going to play then? For all, the next moment, the surrounding black qi became even thicker. A huge black figure flew out from within. It was different from the other figures that had appeared before. This black figure had a solid body. Its entire body was pitch black, and its face was covered with black scars. Its original appearance could not be seen clearly. Waves of bone-chilling aura rushed toward them. Immediately, the entire defensive array trembled. It seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. The demons were here. Ha ha ha. The black figure looked around and suddenly let out a maniacal laugh. I didn't think that the gate to the demonic realm would open one day.
Aya.
Before he could finish his words, he was suddenly kicked down from the sky by someone. His body was like a punctured balloon. With a bang, he turned into wisps of green smoke and disappeared, leaving behind only a set of black bones that no longer made a sound. Shunning retracted her foot and pointed at the half-collapsed gate to the demonic realm. Then, she turned around and said, "Well, I'll go and clean up the mess. I'll find that raging little brat and bring him back. Chef, look after everyone." "Yes, master," I Ching immediately replied. Shun Ying's figure flashed, and she turned and disappeared into the gate. Everyone, after a long time speaking of which, the demon that came out from the demonic realm just now wanted to say that he was a fire demon, right? The fire demon that was said to be able to control the true fire of 10,000 yang and burn everything in the world. Even the immortal emperor might not be his match. The moment he appeared, he was trampled to death. No, they must have heard wrongly. Chapter 129. The Demon Realm. Strange rocks stood erect everywhere, lava covered the ground, and even the horizon was a dusky expanse. At this time, the Demon Realm was facing its first and only genocide crisis in history. An azure figure tore through the demonic world sky, which was dark all year round. Wherever it passed, it was unstoppable, and tens of thousands of demons prostrated themselves. Before the demons could see what it looked like, it had already turned to dust. That figure, from the gate of the demon realm, swept across the entire demon continent. From east to west, then south, then north, then south, then north and south. She seemed to be lost. Straightface, after going back and forth between the north and south for a dozen times, that person pulled out the little dream demon who had just become a demon from a few hundred meters underground and asked for the information he needed. Finally, he headed towards the Demon King Palace in the middle of the continent. And so, 10 minutes later, the Demon King Palace, where the demonic qi was the thickest and thousands of demons gathered, was clear and bright. The city was filled with demonic bones. At this time, all the demons who sacrificed themselves had only one question in their minds. Demons along the way, "Why did you hit me? We were just passing by." Demons guarding the gate, "Why did you hit me? I was just guarding the gate." Demon army, "Why did you hit me? I was just standing guard." Demon general, "Why did you hit me? I was just here to work." No one knew the reason. As for them, the high and mighty demon kings who were invincible, they were already lying on the ground, crying with snot and tears all over their faces. Great immortal, don't hit me. If you hit me again, I'll break up. I was wrong. I really won't dare to do it again. Please spare me." "Speak. Where did that child go?" Shinning stepped on the Demon King's chest and asked in a low voice. What child?" The Demon King was dumbfounded. He had yet to recover from the vicious beating he had just received. He had never been beaten up like this before. It was simply a crushing defeat. As the master of a realm, for the dignity of the demon realm, he wanted to resist, but the key point was that he could not resist at all. He was not even afraid of losing face, and wanted to ask the demons under him for help. With a single thought, he informed the 10 Sky Fiends. The 10 Sky Fiends did come, and they came very quickly, and then, very quickly, they were all destroyed. And with one slap, it was even easier than swatting mosquitoes. They were all lying on the ground, not knowing if they were dead or alive. Too scary. There was actually someone more terrifying than the devil race in this world, and the key point was that he still didn't know what the other party wanted to do. It's the child who just entered the devil world. 15 minutes ago. I don't know. Immortal. He was sleeping soundly in the Devil Palace when she suddenly barged in. Without saying a word, she picked him up and gave him a good beating. How would he know what a child was? Great Immortal, you can take whatever you want, but I really didn't see any children? You really didn't see anything? Shanning continued to ask. I really didn't, Great Immortal. The Demon King was about to cry. So you're here to look for someone. Why didn't you say so earlier? He didn't say that he wouldn't tell her. Then where did he go? He had clearly come in. How would he know? Why don't I gather the demons and help you search? Sure. Shanning hesitated for a moment before removing her foot from his foot. She thought about her motive and asked, Then, do you still dare to do it in the future? I don't dare. The Demon King shook his head repeatedly as he promised, but he didn't dare to get up. He just knelt down and took a deep breath before asking tentatively, Then, Great Immortal, can you tell me what exactly I did wrong? Intending to pass through the gates of the Devil World and run to the Immortal World. Do you still need me to remind you? The Demon King was shocked. The gates of the Devil World are open? Yes. Shanning nodded. Don't you know? I don't know. Shanning, the Demon King, it seemed like she hit the wrong demon? The scene was very awkward. Cough, that. Shanning coughed. Let's talk about that child. She was changing the topic, right? Definitely, right? Oh, he's about this tall, about 8 years old, wearing blue and white clothes. Shanning gestured at her waist. I asked Ahe nearby. They said that you're the eldest here, and you're the one in charge. That's why I came to look for you. What the hell was Ahe? Was it another demon that she met? It was obvious that he had been intimidated by her. That's why he purposely gave her up to kill her. If he found out which demon had lured this jinx to the Demon King Palace, he would definitely not let him off. Then, Great Immortal, can I ask how that child came to the Devil World? And where did he disappear from? Oh, I used a salted fish to slap him in. What the hell? What about the fish? Of course the fish is still. Shanning stopped mid-sentence. That little brat couldn't have been slapped unconscious and still under the fish. Could he? Speaking of which, when she entered the palace, that salted fish did indeed have a bulge under it. Her expression turned awkward. In a flash, she disappeared from the palace. Before the Demon King could heave a sigh of relief, she suddenly ran back. Great Immortal? Why did she come back? I can't find my way back. Bring me there. Could he say no? After Ningxian woke up, he realized that the demonic qi that was everywhere was drilling into his body like steel needles. A look of ecstasy that did not belong to his age flashed across his face. The Devil World? This is the Devil World. He subconsciously turned to look. His eyes widened, and he laughed even more wildly. Haha, that's great. It's really open. When the demons invade, then... He stopped mid-sentence. His expression suddenly contorted, and his eyes flashed with struggle. A moment later, the demonic marks on his face disappeared, and a completely different expression appeared on his face. His eyes were filled with worry. He looked at the open door and seemed to have made up his mind about something. Suddenly, he conjured a seal with both hands. Chingu, what are you trying to do? Stop. His expression became ferocious again. It was as if there was another person in his body, fighting with him for something. The door to the devil world has been destroyed. You can't close it anymore. This happened because of me. His voice lowered again. Naturally, I should be the one to end it. You're crazy. Another voice shouted in panic. I am you. You won't get anything good from killing me. Don't you want to become stronger? If you become a demon, we will become stronger and surpass the other celestial emperors. You will be the strongest person in the 3 realms. It's my fault. I should have gotten rid of you long ago, the other voice said again. His hands moved even faster. There was a faint light, but then it suddenly dimmed. Humph. Do you think that this is still the immortal world, and I can only be at your mercy? There's plenty of demonic chi here. I'm not even sure if you're a match for me. I'd rather die than become a demon. Then you can try to expel me? That? Shining could not help but pat the child who had been mumbling to himself for a long time. You're having fun on your own. He was so young, but he was already playing 2 roles? Who's there? Ningzi, and jumped in fright and exclaimed. He could no longer tell who the voice belonged to. He took 2 steps back and looked up at her. His eyes flashed as he recognized her. It's you. You're Shin. Shin. Was her name that hard to remember? Straight face. Chapter 130. Sect Master Shin. The child's voice was low and gentle again. He said anxiously, I am Chinga. Help me get rid of the demonic seed in my body. He has become one with my mental demons. I can't do it myself. Chinga? Shunning paused. Who? Celestial Emperor Chinga. He was the master of this continent after all. Why was he so unknown? Ha 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 ha. He was about to explain when his voice changed again. He laughed maniacally. Do you think this Earth Immortal can do anything to me? Don't forget this is the demon realm. She can't even protect herself. An Earth Immortal can't even deal with an ordinary demon, much less a demon king. Demon king? You mean him? Shunning stepped to the side and pulled the demon king, who was following behind her like a little quail, out. The 2 voices. Little Black, go and see what's wrong with him. He was still a good kid yesterday. Why did he suddenly become schizophrenic? Yes, Great Immortal. No problem, Great Immortal. The Demon King rolled up his sleeves and moved over. His eyes uncontrollably turned to look at the realm gate. For billions of years, the gate to the demon realm, which had always been tightly shut, was open for the first time. The immortal realm was on the other side. All these years, the demon realm had always wanted to enter but could never do so because of this gate. Occasionally, there were lucky ones who could only use a sliver or 2 of their divine perception to slip through the gap in the gate or use special methods to invade. But now it was finally open. The Demon King was excited. He turned to look at the woman beside him. Suddenly, it was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his heart. He might as well not open it at all. Ningzi and felt a huge wave of demonic chi rushing towards him. Everyone in his body fell silent. He could feel that the demon in front of him was purposely suppressing his demonic chi, but the suppressive force was still frightening. Although his face was swollen, he was very strong, especially strong. Even Celestial Emperor Chungo at his peak would not be a match for him. This person was really the Demon King. The Demon King glanced at the child on the ground and understood his situation. To prevent the Great Immortal from thinking that he was being perfunctory, he reached out and placed his divine perception on the child's forehead.
Huh.
He was stunned. It was actually the reincarnation seal. Great Immortal. The Demon King chuckled and reported in full detail, this little friend, his soul body carries a demon seed. At this moment, it has already hatched and grown, fusing with his heart demon. Right now, it's fighting against the benevolence of his main body. Isn't that obvious? Everyone could see that he was schizophrenic. I'm asking where the demonic seed came from. The Demon King trembled in fear, and his voice immediately lowered. I'm not too sure about this. There are many reasons for the birth of a demon seed. Moreover, the demonic seed in this person's soul was born here. There's no way to verify it. You mean he was born like this? Never heard of people born with schizophrenia?
No.
The Demon King shook his head. It's not innate, it's a past life. What do you mean? Great Immortal. The Demon King pointed at him excitedly and said, his divine consciousness carries the reincarnation seal, which means that he did not reincarnate through the 3 realms. He was an immortal in his past life. The demonic seed was planted in his soul in his past life, but it only hatched recently. What a mess. It was enough to make a television drama about his past life. Little friend, I'm going to bring you back now. But you'd better settle this first, otherwise I won't be able to answer to Father Nyo. She glanced at him. Tell me, what's going on? Who's that Wooden? Sect Master Shin. I am. The child's tone changed midway through his sentence. A glint flashed across his eyes. I'm the real Ningzi and Chungo is trying to take over my body. Hurry up and chase him out of my body. Impudent. The Demon King shouted. He released his demonic chi. How can you speak to a great immortal like that? You're the impudent one. Shunning raised her hand and smacked the back of the Demon King's head. You think you're good at scaring children? The Demon King curled up into a ball like a quail after his flattery had failed. Great Immortal is so fierce, so unpredictable, so unreasonable. Little friend, please continue. This Chungo is trying to take over my body, so shut up, I'm not talking about you. Without waiting for Ningzi and to continue, she pointed at the demonic mark on his face and interrupted him again. You're too ugly. Change to the good-looking little friend in your body. The demonic seed. The Demon King did not wait for Shining to speak. He immediately released some demonic chi to suppress the demonic seed in Ningzi An's body. Indeed, after a while, the demonic mark on his face faded, and he turned back into the delicate-looking little friend. He finally looked a little like the obedient child he used to be. However, there was a hint of maturity in his eyes that did not match his age. Great Immortal Shin. He glanced at the Demon King beside him and immediately changed the way he addressed her. He was smart enough not to ask too many questions. Instead, he began to talk about his past in detail. My name is Chunga. 10,000 years ago, I was ambushed and injured by someone. That was when I was implanted with the demonic seed. At that time, I was severely injured and could only seal it temporarily. Unexpectedly, the demonic seed grew stronger and stronger until it merged with my mental demon. After I recovered, I realized that it was too late. If I tried to force it out, it would damage my cultivation. I might even fall into a large mirror world. He frowned, as if thinking of something. He continued, later, I found a way to create an immortal fetus and reincarnate into it. Although I would have to seal all my cultivation and memories temporarily, I could use the power of reincarnation to slowly cleanse the demonic seed in my body. It will only take a few thousand years at most for my cultivation to be completely restored without any worries. So, you reincarnated into Chu Shuang City? Yes. He nodded. I hesitated for a long time before I sealed the immortal body into Madame Bao's body. However, I did not expect that even though it was just an immortal body that I casually created, the Bao family would use so much immortal qi in their immortal meridians to allow it to be born. As a result, this fetus became an innate sword embodiment. So the innate sword embodiment was caused by excessive nutrition? Did Chef know about this? What was even more coincidental was that the innate sword embodiment attracted a demon. Because of the demonic qi, the demonic seed in my body could not be purged. He wanted to make me completely demonic before I recovered my memories. He frowned deeply. I woke up at the last moment. Now, there is no way to completely purge the demonic seed. Great Immortal. Before he could finish speaking, his expression changed. In a shrill voice, he shouted, Sect Master Shin, don't listen to him. I'm Ningxian. He was lying to you. Do you remember? The last time you had dinner, you asked me if I wanted some pastries? Believe me, Chunga really wanted to possess you. All right. I believe you? Shunning nodded. The demonic seed paused. Great Immortal, Chungo exclaimed. Shunning ignored him. She turned to the Demon King and said, "Little Black."
Yes.
The Demon King immediately stood up straight. "You can pull one of them out, right?" "Of course, I'm a professional." The Demon King immediately patted his chest and promised. "Great Immortal, watch me." "All right, then let's drag that ugly one out." The demonic seed. What happened to believing him? Chapter 131. Let's begin. Shunning urged. She still had to rush home for dinner. The Demon King did not waste any time. He conjured a seal. Ningzi, Anne's expression changed. He turned to run, but after taking a few steps, he squatted down with a pained expression on his face. His entire body curled up into a ball. Black chi surrounded him. Something was floating out of his body. The Demon King stepped forward and reached out to pull something out of Ningzi, Anne's body. After a while, he had a black ball with a red in his hand. The black demonic scars on Ningzi, Anne's face disappeared completely. But compared to before, his aura was much weaker. His face was pale, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Even the thick immortal chi around his body had dissipated a lot. "Thank you." He forced himself to look up. When he saw the Demon King frown, he immediately turned to Shunning. "Thank you, Sect Master Shin, for your help." Shunning did not reply. Instead, she looked at the ball of black and red chi in the Demon King's hand and asked, "What do we do with this? Burn it?" Ningzi Anne's face paled, but he did not speak. "Great Immortal." The Demon King lowered his voice and reminded her, "This demonic seed has already become one with his mental demons. It is now a part of him. If we destroy it, he will die too." "Oh." Shunning nodded. That meant that he now had a split body. One dead, two dead? The settings of this world were so troublesome. Is there any other way? Sect Master Shun, don't worry. Ningzi and took a deep breath and stood up. "Let me take care of this." As he said that, he took the mass of black gas, raised his hand, and laid down in a ray formation. He chanted a long incantation, and after a while, rays of golden light appeared around his body, and countless talismans quickly flew into the mass of black gas. Reincarnation seal? The Demon King was shocked. He subconsciously opened his mouth and frowned. The next moment, he saw that he had taken out a golden lotus and thrown it into the ball of black chi.
He paused again.
"So that's how it is." "Hey, explain." Ing, the only one who did not understand what was happening, kicked the Demon King beside her. Reporting to Great Immortal, the Demon King immediately started to explain. He used the Tranquil Heart Lotus as a catalyst to activate the reincarnation seal. He directly sent the heart demon out of his body to be reincarnated. This way, he could borrow the power of reincarnation to purify his inner demons. Secondly, the Tranquil Heart Lotus was a sacred object of the celestial world, and it could eliminate evil thoughts. In other words, after its rebirth, it will no longer have the chance to become a demon. Oh, Zhang Xian didn't understand. But in the next moment, the cloud of black gas and the lotus flower slowly fused into one. After a short while, it began to take shape. After a quarter of an hour, the black gas and the lotus flower disappeared, and a sleeping baby appeared on the ground.
Wow, high-tech.
Shun Ying's eyes widened. Ningzi, and picked up the baby from the ground with some difficulty. He looked at her and said, "She won't remember anything from the past. After 3 more rounds of reincarnation, she will become a real person. Her connection with me will also be severed. When we return to the immortal world, I will personally send her to the lower realm." She stepped forward to take a look and found that it was a baby girl with a red lotus mark on her forehead. The corner of his mouth twitched. This reincarnation technology was imported from Thailand? It even had the ability to change one's gender. Since it's settled, let's go back. "I'm leaving." Shunning pointed at the open door. She had just taken 2 steps when she realized that the little kid was not following her. "Is there anything else?" "Sect Master Shin, my problem has been settled, but the door to the demon realm has been opened." He frowned deeply and turned to look at the Demon King behind him warily. I don't know what your relationship with this demon is, and what kind of agreement did you make? What kind of agreement did they reach? However, the fiend race has always been eyeing our immortal world covetously. We definitely can't ignore them. Kid, don't spout nonsense. Before Shun-Ing could speak, the Demon King jumped up in fright. His whole body trembled. Who's eyeing the demon race? Who wants to go to the immortal world? I don't care. Don't spout nonsense in front of Great Immortal. I just helped him, but this kid immediately repaid my kindness with enmity. Just you wait. He immediately put on a pitiful expression and looked at Shun-Ing seriously. Great Immortal, I really have no intention of invading the immortal world. Don't worry, I promise to inform all the demons immediately. Not a single demon will dare to step out of this door. Whoever steps out, I will stomp on his foot. You have to believe me. Oh, Shun-Ing did not seem to mind at all. She patted the Demon King's shoulder and said, I believe you. Great Immortal. The Demon King heaved a sigh of relief. So his flattery had worked. Sect Master Shin. Ningzi and was shocked. His face was full of disapproval. How could the demon believe her? He was just about to persuade her. Shun-Ing directly grabbed him and said, All right, let's go back. Great Immortal, take care. Just as Shun-Ing was about to jump out of the door to the demon realm, she suddenly turned back and added, Oh yes, I forgot to tell you. I live right at this door. The Demon King. What happened to trust? Was this a threat? It was definitely a threat. The moment Shun-Ing stepped out of the door, she could clearly feel that the demonic qi around her was much thinner than before. However, Ningzi and had been in the demon realm for too long. In addition, he had forcefully used the reincarnation seal earlier. Before he could pass through the door, he fainted. Shun-Ing had no choice but to grab him with one hand and carry the baby with the other. Then, she jumped out of the door. Master. I Ching was the first to approach her. Just as he was about to approach her, he paused and looked at the person in her arms. Why was there an extra baby? The Bao father and son and the other disciples all gathered around them. Little In. Bao Yi immediately took Ningzi and from her hands and checked his pulse. Then, he heaved a sigh of relief. He also noticed the baby girl in Shun-Ying's arms. Sect Master Shin, this child is? Why did 2 people go in but 3 came out? Shun-Ing turned and stuffed the baby girl into Bao Feiping's arms. Your granddaughter. Bao Feiping. Bao Yi. Granddaughter? Little In was only 8 years old, hey? Could they ask who gave birth to her? Is it settled? Lone Moon stepped forward and asked. Yes. Shun-Ing nodded. Where did you go? What exactly happened in there? Nothing much. I just went to the Demon King's palace. The Demon King's palace. Lone Moon exclaimed. Even the people around them turned to look at her. You saw the Demon King? Yes. Shun-Ing nodded naturally. He looks quite like a rabbit. Rabbit? Lone Moon paused. She couldn't be talking about the rabbit monarch, could she? Suddenly, he did not feel like asking. What did she do to the Demon King? Chapter 132. Don't worry, the demons won't come again, Shun-Ing promised. Lone Moon looked up at the gate that was still floating in the air, then turned to look at the demonic qi that had not dissipated. Even if they don't come, what should we do next? They could not let the demonic qi surround the invincible sect forever. Shun-Ing frowned too. The smog was indeed a big problem. How about I get Little Black to come and ask? He should not have gone far. Little Black. What the hell? Wait, what are you doing? He was about to ask, but Shun-Ing had already turned to jump back through the gate. Before he could grab her, suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky, directly striking the huge gate of the demonic world in the air. With a loud bang, the whole gate suddenly collapsed. With a crash, it broke into pieces on the ground. Huge black rocks fell down one by one. But the moment they landed, they turned into dust. The entrance to the demonic world disappeared. I Ching suddenly said. Everyone looked up. Sure enough, the big black hole at the door disappeared with the disappearance of the giant door. Even the gloomy sky suddenly became clear again. If not for the demonic chi that was still around the invincible sect, people could not help but wonder if the gate of the demonic world had really appeared before. What's going on? Did the demonic world destroy the entrance? Everyone was at a loss. No one knew what was going on. But the disappearance of the gate of the demonic world made everyone heave a sigh of relief. Only Shunning looked up at a certain spot in the sky, frowning. That bolt of lightning, the gate of the demonic world was destroyed, and even the entrance disappeared. But the demonic chi around the invincible sect could not be stuffed back into the demonic world. But the immortal chi in the sect was so thick that it was not enough to completely disperse the demonic chi. Lone Moon initially thought of moving, but soon discovered that because the demonic chi was too thick, all the disciples had to use all their strength to defend against the demonic chi to ensure that they would not be hurt. This way, over time, it stimulated their potential, and they were automatically in a state of movement. Because of this, many disciples' cultivation levels did not decrease, but increased. Because he was supporting the formation, his cultivation level had also loosened. In just a few months, he had directly advanced from an earth immortal to a golden immortal. Therefore, he immediately changed his mind about moving. This was not demonic chi, it was simply a natural upgrade array. He directly modified the mountain guarding formation, completely isolating the demonic chi in the sect so that it only surrounded the sect. This way, they could defend against external enemies, and they could also use it as a training ground. When he had nothing to do, he would go in and level up in a masochistic manner. It was more useful than any training. This could be considered a blessing in disguise. The entire sect was no longer in a state of panic. Everyone was beaming with joy. The Bao father and son were not happy at all. Their son, grandson, whom they had painstakingly saved, had suddenly become Celestial Emperor Chingo. Be it in terms of status or cultivation, he was several generations above them. Furthermore, they had a great-granddaughter now. It was hard for them to accept this in such a short period of time. The few of them had no intention of staying at Invincible Sect any longer. Once Ningzi and's injuries were more or less healed, they bade him farewell. Lone Moon politely sent the few of them down the mountain. Seeing that the atmosphere was obviously not as harmonious as when they first arrived, he did not ask any further questions. "Brother Lone Moon, are you sure you don't want to follow us to Jingxing City?" Bao Feiping looked up at the demonic chi around Invincible Sect that had yet to dissipate. He reminded Lone Moon worriedly, "This is demonic chi after all, and we can't be sure if the gates to the demonic realm will appear again." Bao Feiping, who did not know what had happened to the demonic realm, looked very worried. "Thank you for your kind intentions, City Lord." Lone Moon smiled. "It is precisely because the gates to the demonic realm are unstable that our sect has to stay here." He had misunderstood previously. He did not expect Shening to be so powerful. He only regretted that he did not let Shening stay longer in the demonic realm. It was such a good opportunity, yet he did not manage to extort money from her. What a loss. He listened to her calling him daddy every day, yet she did not receive any of his teachings.
Sigh.
Your sect is really righteous. Bao Feiping, who had completely misunderstood the situation, sighed in admiration. He turned back to look at his son. His appearance had not changed, but his entire body was emitting thick immortal chi. Bao Feiping looked at Lone Moon with a complicated expression. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but stopped himself. "City Lord, if you have something to say, just say it," Lone Moon said. Bao Feiping smiled and said, "Listen, the matter regarding Celestial Emperor Chingo is very important. Could you please keep it a secret for now? After all, the Celestial Emperor's cultivation has not fully recovered. He might have to stay with the Bao family for a period of time. He cannot reveal his identity." With that said, he added in a low voice, "This is the Celestial Emperor's wish. Brother Lone Moon, you should understand." Lone Moon frowned. He was not happy with the threat in Bao Feiping's last sentence. However, seeing how worried Bao Feiping was, Lone Moon nodded and said, "Don't worry. Only Shening, I Ching, and I know about this. We will not make it public." Thank you, Brother Lone Moon. Bao Feiping heaved a sigh of relief and said goodbye once more. Then he turned and walked towards the three people behind him. He first bowed to Ningzi, and then summoned his sword and flew away. Lone Moon looked at them awkwardly. He did not know what the Bao family was thinking. Were they happy to have someone to rely on? Or were they humiliated by being fooled by their superiors? After all, this was someone else's business. He did not think too much about it. After all, he would not have much contact with them in the future. Indeed, he should stay away from the male lead. Once the Bao family left, the entire Invincible sect began their daily cultivation routine. Lone Moon even drew up a detailed cultivation plan and watched over the disciples' cultivation every day. This was obviously effective. In just 2 short years, Yu Hong and Siyu had successfully become true Earth Immortals. Most of the other disciples also showed signs of forming immortal bones. Even Bitao was showing signs of breaking through to become a golden immortal. Just as the entire sect was working hard to level up, they received an unexpected piece of news from the capital city. Summoning order? Shining paused. What is it? It's from the capital city. Lone Moon threw a red token to I Ching and said, "It says you have to rush over within 3 days." Why, chef? How would I know? Lone Moon was a little annoyed. This thing flew in on its own. It's not like you didn't see it. Maybe it's because he's a sword immortal and has just become a Stygian immortal, Bitao guessed. Chongzhen is considered a powerful country in the northern wilderness continent. There are not many exalted immortals there. Anyone who becomes an exalted immortal will be summoned to the capital city once. The immortal emperor will reward them. Although fellow immortal I Ching is not an exalted immortal, he is a sword immortal. He is not much weaker than an exalted immortal. So you mean he's summoned to be rewarded? Lone Moon paused. Then why now? Hasn't he been a Stygian immortal for more than 2 years? Maybe it's because Chu Shuang City discovered the gates to the demonic realm, Bitao continued. That's why he's only thinking about it now. Do you want to go? Shanning looked at Chef. I Ching frowned, showing that he was not interested in receiving a reward. We have to go, Great Immortal, Bitao said anxiously. Otherwise, it would be disrespectful to His Majesty. Our sect is in Chongzhen's territory after all. If we offend the immortal emperor, I'm afraid nothing good will come out of it. Shen Ing was a little annoyed. This is so troublesome. I can't even stay at home. Chapter 133. Shen Ing and Lone Moon followed I Ching to Shangdu together. Although the teleportation array in the immortal realm was obviously of a much higher level than the one in the lower realm, they still spent a whole 3 days to rush from Invincible Sect to Shangdu, the capital of Chongzhen Nation. Compared to Chu Shuang City, Shangdu was obviously much bigger. This was a city built completely above the clouds. Between the clouds, there were all kinds of antique buildings, especially in the center. A huge palace floated high above all the other immortal palaces, dazzling with gold and jade. At the very front of the city stood a city gate so high that the top could not be seen. There were no guards at the gate, but there was a huge array in the middle, surrounded by dermic talismans, shining with golden light. I Ching took out the summoning token. Instantly, there was a flash of red light, and the token flew directly into the gate. The array in the gate began to dim, revealing a passage. The three walked in directly. The moment they stepped through the gate, the scenery in front of them changed. Immediately, more immortal palaces appeared. The surroundings were filled with fog and auspicious clouds. There were white immortal palaces everywhere, and from time to time, the cries of immortal cranes could be heard. Between the immortal palaces, there was a white jade staircase. Each step floated independently, and many immortals stood on it, moving on their own. Even the random plants growing by the side of the road were rare spirit flowers and rare herbs in the lower realm. They had just stood at the gate when an immortal in green flew towards them from afar. Lone Moon looked at him casually and found that he was actually a Stygian immortal. That person bowed respectfully to them and said, "May I ask which of the 3 of you is Sword Immortal I Ching?" The 3 of them paused, then thought of the token that flew in, and understood. I Ching stepped forward. I am fellow immortal I Ching. That person smiled and became even more polite. He stepped sideways and said, His Majesty has ordered me to wait here. Since fellow immortal is here, please follow me into War-Stopping Palace and pay your respects to His Majesty. So soon? I Ching was stunned. Wasn't this a normal summoning? The immortal emperor would actually meet him personally, and they had just entered the city. Not really soon. That person smiled even more kindly. I have been waiting here for fellow immortal for 3 days. 3 days. This time, it wasn't just I Ching. Even Lone Moon was confused and frowned subconsciously. It seemed like this immortal emperor held I Ching in high regard. Since that's the case, we'll wait for you in the city. Lone Moon handed him a transmission talisman. Come and find us after you come out. I Ching frowned and turned to Shining. Master. Go ahead. Shining nodded. Only then did I Ching turn to look at the immortal receiving them.
Please.
The man nodded and led I Ching all the way to the dazzling golden and dazzling huge palace in the Immortal Palace. Let's find a place to stay first, then go to the city to take a look. Seeing that the two of them had gone far away, Lone Moon excitedly pointed to the city, his face full of eagerness. Suddenly recalling something, he instructed, You stay close to me, don't run around.
Oh.
Shining nodded. But in view of a certain someone's dark history of getting lost, Lone Moon thought about it and still grabbed her hand, pulling her all the way to a place that looked like a restaurant. First, they got a private room. Seeing that it was almost noon, they ordered a table full of dishes. I don't know how long I Ching will take. You eat first. I'm going to the city to look for business opportunities. I'll be back soon. This time, he came to Xanadu not just to accompany I Ching, but mainly for Invincible Sect. Ningzi and appearance disrupted all his plans. His original plan to earn money naturally went up in smoke. Ever since the Bao family father and son went to the new city, they had sent those people over, but he really did not want to have anything to do with them, so he sent them back. Perhaps they also understood his intentions. These 2 years, they did not come looking for him. So this time, he came to Xanadu no matter what, to find a way for Invincible Sect to earn money, otherwise they would really run out of food. If it were other immortal disciples, it would be fine, but if it was Shunning, that foodie, he could imagine that once they ran out of food, she would turn around and turn the sky upside down. Listen, don't run around. Yes, Father Nyo? Looking at the table full of dishes, Shunning was in a good mood and immediately started eating. MMA was not as good as chef's, but it was still not bad. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. Why did he have the illusion that in the entire sect, he was the only one worrying for nothing? For the 101st time, he regretted it for being blind to have boarded Xinying's pirate ship. Father Nyo was very good at doing business. He said he was going to look for business opportunities, and soon after he left, he settled it. Xinying had not even finished eating when she saw him from afar, leading around, jade-like, very affluent immortal. The two walked in, talking and laughing, looking as if they were going to become sworn brothers in the next second. This is? The round immortal walked straight in, and saw Xinying at the table with a piece of meat in her hand, stunned. The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched, as if he had just remembered Xinying, and had to explain, Xinying, my sect master. He said the last 2 words very softly. So, it's Sect Master Shin. It's an honor to meet you. The immortal immediately cupped his fists and bowed. Xinying returned a smile, and gave Father Nyo a push. Who is this? This is Exalted Immortal Xu Jiang, still the most famous alchemy immortal in Upper Capital City, a high-level alchemist. Half of the high-level immortal pills in Chonglan Nation's immortal cities come from his hands. Lone Moon smiled brightly, and then sent a voice transmission to Xinying, the richest man in the city. Oh. Xinying understood immediately. Father Nyo was indeed worthy of being called back by the richest man in just an hour, and an exalted immortal at that. Brother Lone Moon, you praise me too much. Xu Jiang smiled and said, It's fate that we met. If there's anything you need me for in the future, just let me know. It's just that. Something flashed in his eyes, and he looked at Shining and said vaguely, I wonder if what fellow immortal said just now is true? Brother Shu is talking about that sacred ground? Of course it's true. Seeing that Xu Jiang was not afraid of Shining, he asked directly, Is there really such a magical place? Lone Moon nodded hard and said, Didn't I bring Brother Shu here to verify this matter? If you're worried, why don't we start now? His face lit up, and he seemed to have thought of something. Brother Lone Moon, please wait. Suddenly, he took out a white Dharma artifact that looked like a bell and placed it on the table. Immediately, a white light flashed from the bell. A moment later, a transparent barrier surrounded the entire private room. The commotion outside instantly quietened down. I know that Brother Lone Moon trusts me, but this matter is very important. It's better to be careful. Brother Shu is really thoughtful. Lone Moon nodded and then took out a talisman. This is it. Isn't this the spirit transmission talisman? Chapter 134. That's right. Lone Moon stopped smiling and said anxiously, That Holy Land is located far away, and it's extremely dangerous. I'm afraid it won't be easy for me to enter with my real body. If Brother Shu trusts me, you can split your divine sense, and I will use this talisman to send you in. Xu Jiang hesitated for a moment. A look of struggle flashed across his face, but after a while, he gritted his teeth and nodded. I believe, Brother Lone Moon, let's begin. With that said, he stood up and moved the chair away, closing his eyes and sitting cross-legged on the ground. Not long after, a shadow suddenly appeared on his body, and his divine sense left his body. Lone Moon smiled as he stepped forward and said, Brother Shu, remember, although that place is magical, it is also an illusory realm. An extremely terrifying scene will appear. Don't stay for too long. If you can't hold on any longer, just come back. Seeing him nod, Lone Moon directly activated the talisman in his hand and slapped it on the illusory figure. Instantly, Xu Jiang's illusory figure disappeared from the private room. Where did you send him? Shining asked casually as she ate. Lone Moon sat down calmly and poured himself a glass of water. I sent it to Invincible's sect.
Huh?
The one who prepared it said that it was sent to the foot of the mountain. Foot of the mountain? Shining paused and looked at him from the corner of her eyes. What did you trick him into? He took a sip of water, and his eyes narrowed like a fox's. What do you mean by scam? I just told him that I found a holy land that could quickly improve his cultivation. Whether it was his skills, comprehension, or even his state of mind and divine sense, they could all be improved quickly. What sacred land? Why didn't she know that there was such a place at the foot of Invincible Sect's mountain? It's the devil chi. The demonic chi in Invincible Sect could indeed stimulate one's potential. It would be a waste not to use such a natural place to level up to earn money. I've already asked around. He's the richest person in Chongzhen. Half of the shops in the city belong to him. If we want to turn Invincible Sect into a high-end, grand, and luxurious place for cultivation, we can't do without his help. So, all you did was sell him some demonic chi. Was there anything Father Nyo couldn't sell? It was no wonder that he had spent half a day setting up an array formation at the foot of the mountain with Yu Hong and the rest. Is it because of this? This is marketing packaging. Do you understand packaging? Moreover, it was his divine sense that entered, not his body. There is no danger of demonic chi entering the body. However, the demonic aura was so obvious. Wasn't he afraid that this person would see through the truth after coming out and find trouble with him? I won't. As if he knew what she was thinking, Lone Moon smiled slyly. Just as he was thinking, the person sitting on the ground suddenly shuddered and woke up abruptly. Lone Moon immediately walked over, only to see that his forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his face was so pale that there was not a trace of blood in it. Brother Lone Moon there. He grabbed Lone Moon frantically, as if he wanted to say something. Brother Shu, don't be anxious. Lone Moon immediately interrupted him and resumed his expression of a profiteer. He smiled like a flower and said, The things you see in the Holy Land's illusion vary from person to person, but they are not real. Don't be anxious. Take a look at your divine sense and adjust your breath. Xu Jiang was taken aback. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes to regulate his breathing, and began to look inside. The next moment, however, his eyes widened in surprise.
My
Divine sense. He actually found that his divine sense was actually a little stronger than before. Although this change was very small, it was a miracle for him, whose cultivation had not improved in tens of thousands of years. The key was that he had just entered for less than a quarter of an hour. Xu Zhang's face was instantly filled with joy. As if unable to suppress the joy in his heart, he stood up and said excitedly, "Brother Lone Moon was right. There is actually such a magical place in this world. I also came across this place by chance. The only bad thing is that this holy land can confuse people's minds. By the way, what did Brother Xu see in there just now?" he asked deliberately. Xu Jiang stiffened, his eyes flashed, and immediately changed the topic. "Nothing? By the way, Lone Moon really wants to share this holy land with all the immortals?" Of course. Lone Moon did not ask again. Another way to confuse the mind was to be trapped by mental demons. Anyone who had reached his level of cultivation would not easily admit to being affected by mental demons. That was why he dug a trap here from the beginning, to make everyone who entered think that the demonic chi they saw was just an illusion. So they would definitely not have any doubts about this. Seeing that he had convinced Xu Jiang, Lone Moon immediately entered into business mode and began to enthusiastically discuss the Holy Land development plan. Shunning was dumbfounded. The two of them had already set a sky-high price for an ordinary spirit transmission talisman. Silently giving a thumbs up to someone's business skills, she continued to eat her own food. Sure enough, your father is your father. The world of the rich is so hard to understand. The two chatted directly until the sun set. Shunning ate from lunch to afternoon tea, and then to dinner. Only then did the two reach a preliminary cooperation plan. Lone Moon gave 10 spirit transmission talismans to Xu Jiang and arranged for a new batch of people to be tricked, oh no, to enter the Holy Land to cultivate to enter after the auction 3 months later. To show his sincerity, Xu Jiang even paid a storage bag of supreme-grade immortal stones as a deposit. Shunning did not know exactly how much, but seeing how Lone Moon added 3 dishes for her without saying anything, she guessed it was probably an astronomical figure that she could not imagine. Shunning was planning to take advantage of Father Nio's good mood to apply for a midnight snack when Chef, who had been gone for a day, finally returned. "Master." "Hey, Chef." Shunning waved her hand. He scanned the room, and his gaze landed on Xu Jiang. Frowning, he asked, "This is? Why was there another little bitch?" "Greetings, fellow immortal." Xu Jiang smiled and took the initiative to greet him. "I am Xu Jiang, exalted immortal." I Ching nodded. "What took you so long?" Lone Moon looked at the sky outside and realized that a day had passed unknowingly. "What happened to you in the Immortal Palace?" "Nothing." Seeming to have thought of something, I Ching frowned and said, "The Immortal Emperor wanted to give me Qing Han City. I rejected it."
What?
The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched. He did not expect the so-called reward to be an immortal city. The key was that he rejected it. This prodigal. Why did he work so hard to earn money for? Why did he suddenly give you an immortal city? Shunning asked casually. Lone Moon paused and then reacted. That's right. There were many exalted immortals in Chonglan, but not all of them could become a city lord. What's more, I Ching was only a Stygian immortal. Why did he value him so much? It couldn't be that he took a liking to a talent like him at first sight, could it? Other things aside, Lone Moon knew I Ching's character. He was not a pleasing immortal. I don't know. I Ching shook his head and walked to Xunying's side. Habitually, he poured her a cup of tea and continued, but he wants me to go to Yufeng Immortal Region in a month's time to participate in some big test. Yufeng Immortal Region sword seeking. As soon as he finished speaking, Xu Jiang suddenly exclaimed. His eyes widened as he looked at I Ching. You're a sword immortal. What did he mean? Shining and Lone Moon both turned to look at Xu Jiang. Xu Jiang's face was full of excitement. He looked at I Ching with even more excitement than when he first emerged from the demonic qi. Fellow Immortal was actually chosen by His Majesty to search for the sword. You're so lucky. What do you mean by searching for the sword?
Shining asked.
Xu Jiang could not suppress the excitement in his heart. He took a deep breath and explained in a low voice, "Do the three of you know where Yufeng Immortal Region is?" Chapter 135. The Yulin Immortal Territory is an immortal mystic realm located in the Outer Immortal Realm. Xu Jiang introduced it mysteriously. Legend has it that it was a land left behind by the divine race in ancient times. The environment inside is extremely dangerous, but there are many opportunities. Legend has it that the various celestial emperors found the 10 Directions divine weapon here. 10 Directions divine weapon? Lone Moon frowned.
What's that?
It's a creation treasure left behind by the ancient divine race after they split the heavens and split the earth. Xu Jiang explained. I heard that the reason why the 10 Directions celestial emperors could rule over an area was not only because they had the highest cultivation, but also because they had this divine weapon in their hands. Legend has it that these divine weapons have the power to split the heavens and split the earth. Then what about searching for the sword? I Ching asked. Oh, that's because although the 10 Directions divine weapon has already been found by the celestial emperors, legend has it that the divine weapon used by the god of creation to split the heavens, the six-joint sword, has been sleeping in this immortal territory, waiting for the fated one. Heaven-splitting divine weapon. Shining paused. Is it to split the heavens? Xu Jiang nodded vigorously. Legend has it that the six-joint sword is indeed that powerful. It can split the heavens and split the realms. It's not impossible for it to travel through the 3 realms. Oh, that's not that difficult, is it? It's just opening a door. Lone Moon and I Ching's mouths twitched. They instantly recalled a certain someone's heroic feat of tearing the realm gate apart with her bare hands. Their curiosity towards a certain divine weapon plummeted to freezing point. Haha, what kind of lousy divine weapon could compare to a cheat? There was no need to go to this place at all. Ha ha ha, fellow Immortal Shen must be joking. Xu Jiang, however, thought she was joking, and then he continued. Even though this Yulin Immortal region is dangerous, there are countless rare and precious treasures within it. Even the rocks, forests, and soil that cover the ground are all high-grade materials for forging immortal artifacts. Perhaps any random rock on the roadside can be used to forge a 4th or 5th grade immortal weapon. It's rare to come across one in the immortal realm. Artifact refining.
Go.
You must go. Lone Moon patted I Ching's shoulder.
Che.
I Ching, I think you've just ascended to the Stygian immortal stage and need more training. You must not miss this opportunity. Not going. I Ching rejected immediately and continued to pour more tea for the person beside him. This trip will take more than 3 months. It's too long. Master cannot be left alone. Who knows what other little b** cheese you will bring to snatch my master away. Lone Moon wanted to beat this crazy fan to death. Did she not know that the invincible sect lacked weapons the most now? Why didn't he have one? What a great opportunity. He gritted his teeth and turned to Shining. Can you control your disciple? But it's really too long. 3 months. Next month's food allowance will be doubled. Chef, Father Nyo is right. Shining looked at I Ching seriously. For the sake of invincible sect, we cannot let go of this opportunity. I Ching, that's right. Lone Moon's eyes lit up as he continued. Or maybe you can ask that immortal emperor to bring Shining and me along. I'm afraid that won't do. Before I Ching could speak, Xu Jiang spoke first. Brother Lone Moon, you don't know this. This Yulin immortal domain only opens once every 1,000 years. To enter, you have to cross the Miao River. This river does not allow anything. Only one item can cross the river. Fellow immortal I Ching, the immortal emperor, should have given this item to you, right? I Ching paused. As if remembering, he hurriedly took out a green leaf. He gave this to me when I entered the immortal palace. He said it was to congratulate me on becoming a Stygian immortal. That's it. Shu Jiang said with certainty. This is the winter spirit leaf. Only young Emperor Sun Shu of the Shangdong immortal abode in East Marsh has it. Shunning glanced at the palm-sized leaf in his hand. It looked just like a big four-leaf clover. It couldn't be fed to frogs. There was nothing special about it. Not only that, outside the Yulin immortal domain, there are huge groups of sword chi all year round. If one is not a sword immortal who has a deep understanding of sword intent, or if one's cultivation has reached the extreme of a celestial emperor, one cannot enter. He continued to explain. That's why His Majesty let sword immortals be the people searching for the sword. So that was it. That meant that they needed a pass. They could not go just because they wanted to. Brother Shu, that young Emperor Sun Shu, what is he like? Brother Lone Moon, don't be rash. Seeing that I Ching was not giving up, Shu Jiang continued to persuade him. Only sword immortals can enter the Yulin immortal domain. I am.
What?
He was actually a sword immortal too. When did sword immortals become so common? Then, he looked at Shunning. It couldn't be such a coincidence, could it? Oh, you don't have to worry about her. He patted I Ching's shoulder confidently. Not to mention the fact that there's sword chi to block it. Even if she doesn't block it, it would be bullying. Shu Jiang, I Ching, Shunning. Son of A. B*** T. East Marsh. The new partner, Shu Jiang, said that young Emperor Sun Shu was a strange person. Although he had long cultivated to the level of a young emperor, he lived alone in the most remote immortal abode in East Wilderness. He did not like to interact with others. He liked to plant flowers and plants, but they were not immortal herbs or herbs. He just liked it. When Lone Moon heard that, he realized that Sun Shu was an environmental immortal. So 5 days later, he and Shunning stood outside the Shangdong immortal abode, holding a resentful radish in his hand. Little Missy, are you really going to abandon me? Radish's leaves looked like salted vegetables. It looked sad. No. Radish was born as a radish and died as your divination. Can you bear to let my pure body be tainted by others? Shunning looked at it and sighed. I can bear to. It was a vegetable anyway. Radish. His heart hurt. Who's outside the abode? Suddenly, a voice sounded beside his ear, carrying with it a faint immortal pressure. Lone Moon felt his heart stop. He took a deep breath to ease the pressure. He stepped forward and said, I am Lone Moon, a sword cultivator from Invincible Sect. I am here to see young Emperor Sun. A sword cultivator? That person snorted coldly, full of disdain. Another person who is not afraid of death and wants to enter the immortal domain to find a sword.
Come in.
As soon as he finished speaking, the stone wall in front of him, which originally had the words Shangdong Immortal Abode written on it, suddenly opened to reveal a human-sized hole. Inside, immortal chi overflowed, faintly carrying the aura of plants. Only then did Lone Moon step forward. He pulled a certain someone who looked like she was about to fall asleep next to him and walked straight in. In the blink of an eye, the scene in front of them changed. A sea of flowers appeared, with all kinds of flowers blooming all over the ground. Not far away was a small building. The small building was not big, but it was built with white bamboo. It was sparkling and translucent, like a crystal palace. The immortal energy above it even made the small building shine with multicolored light. It could be said that it was quite flashy. Even more flashy was the person sitting on the lounge chair. He was dressed in a dazzling red robe, the long hem of his robe swaying on the ground like a red flower. His long hair reached the ground and was scattered behind his back. His robe was half open, and his eyes were like silk. If not for the fact that his chest was flat and he was very much a man, Lone Moon would have called him a seductive slut. Sun Shu glanced at the person who entered, the disdain in his eyes growing. Greetings, young Emperor Sun. Lone Moon stepped forward and bowed politely. You're the sword immortal who came to ask for the winter spirit leaf? He suddenly laughed and turned around, causing a wave of red to appear on his robe. Looking at him from the front, he looked even more stunning. It was as if all the words in the world could not match his looks. Even the human-shaped radish in front of him did not have such a color. Shining, who was still sleeping at the side, took a step forward, her eyes widening. Lone Moon was shocked. He hurriedly pulled her back and said in a low voice, "Hey, don't be seduced by his beauty. We have serious matters to attend to." "No." Shining blinked, still looking in that direction. "I'm just curious." "Curious about what?" "His robe. It's so long, robe."
Huh?
It's not strange for a man to wear red robes, is it? Just as he was thinking, he heard Shining say, "It's so long, won't you step on it?" Huh. Just as she finished speaking, she saw the person on the other side stand up. "You think the winter spirit leaf." Before he finished speaking, he suddenly stepped on his own robe. His body swayed, and he fell forward heavily, smashing his face into the mud. Lone Moon. Shining. So why was he acting cool at home? Chapter 136. Sun Shu got up quickly. His expression changed, and he stood up immediately. He tore off his clothes and tore them to shreds. He even stomped on the clothes to vent his anger. With a wave of his hand, another blue robe appeared and draped over him. But this time, it did not have the long hem. "Cough, what are you doing here?" "Oh yes, I don't give my winter spirit leaves to just anyone." He coughed and resumed his cold demeanor. It was as if the person who had just fallen was not him, if not for the fresh mud on his face. Lone Moon. Shining. That young Emperor's son. Father Nyo was an experienced negotiator after all. He was the first to recover and put on a serious expression. "We know that this is precious, but we heard that young Emperor's son has always been generous. Besides, you are the only one who has this winter spirit leaf. That's why." When they saw that he was still unmoved, they immediately handed over the radish in their hands, which had a face full of resentment. "I heard that young emperor is the most elegant deity in the immortal realm. We inadvertently obtained a vegetation spirit, so we are most familiar with plants. As long as it stays here for 3 months, I guarantee that the plants in young emperor's garden will become even more beautiful." G. The radish began to struggle as soon as he finished speaking. It did not want to stay here for 3 months. Vegetation spirit? Young Emperor Sun Shu glanced over and saw the radish in Lone Moon's hand. His expression was one of disgust. "How can such an ugly weed be planted in my garden?" G. You're the ugly one. Your whole family is ugly." Lone Moon's mouth twitched. This Sun Shu was not only pretentious, he was also obsessed with appearances. After some thought, he shook the radish and said, "Radish, cooperate with me. Change back to your human form." Humph. The radish did become bigger, but not in human form. With a flash of white light, it turned from a small radish to a big radish. Lone Moon's hand became heavy. He lost his balance and almost knelt down.
Shit.
This stinky radish was only here for 3 months. Why was it throwing a tantrum? "Do you believe that I will throw you to I Ching tonight and make you into stew?" The radish was not threatened at all. It replied, "Pooey." Slowly, it returned to its original size. "Add more dishes for night." "All right." Sun Shu wasn't interested in the vegetation spirit. He took out a fan from somewhere, and with his muddy face still on, he said in a self-righteous manner, "You don't have to think of ways to please me. If you want this winter spirit leaf, you just have to follow my rules." He thought for a moment, and with a flip of his palm, a white box appeared in his hand. With a wave of his hand, a small silver sword appeared in the box. It flew around the two of them, and then flew back into the box in his hand. "You want to enter the immortal domain, because you are sword immortals and have a deeper understanding of sword arts." He raised the box in his hand and said, "The sword in this box is also a treasure. It is my weapon, a 10th grade immortal sword. This box was made of spirit-absorbing stones. If you have the ability, open this box and take out the sword inside, and I will give you the winter spirit leaf. Otherwise, with your abilities, you will only die if you enter." With that said, He turned and waved his hand. Immediately, a tree about the height of 3 people appeared behind him. The tree was densely covered with the same 4-leaf clover that I Ching had in his hand. Really? Lomun's eyes lit up, and he confirmed again. I am a dignified young emperor. Why would I lie to a mere sword immortal like you? Sun Shu did not think that the two of them would be able to open it. When he first arrived at the door, he had checked their cultivation level. One was at most an earth immortal, and the other was a golden immortal. Even exalted immortals could not open this 10th grade immortal artifact box. With that said, he waved his hand, and the box flew in front of the two of them. Lone Moon caught it and understood what he was thinking. The spirit-absorbing stones were extremely sturdy and could block out immortal chi. In other words, the box could not be opened using immortal spells. It could only be opened by physical attacks. Given his cultivation level, there was no way he could open it. But he had a cheat. Shunning, take care of this box. He turned and handed the box to the person beside him. Shunning might not have much else, but her physical attacks were definitely off the charts. Huh. Shunning subconsciously took it. How do I do that? Up to you. Just destroy it. Oh. He thought for a moment, then added, just take out the... Before he could finish speaking, there was a cracking sound. Shunning tightened her grip, then loosened her grip. The supposedly indestructible spirit-absorbing box had turned into a pile of black ash, along with the immortal sword inside. Take out what? Shunning finally heard him. She looked at the pile of ash in her palm. Air. Is it too late? She should have said so earlier. Sun Shu, Lone Moon. A while later, my 10th grade immortal sword. Sun Shu sucked in a breath, his eyes widening. Father Nyo, what do we do? Shunning trembled. Why did the other side suddenly look like they were going to eat her up? You're asking me. Lone Moon was about to vomit blood. Why did you crush it for no reason? Didn't you ask me to destroy it? I didn't ask you to destroy the sword too. Young Emperor? You, Sun Shu roared. The fan in his hand instantly turned into a long sword. He glared at them with bloodshot eyes. Lone Moon felt his heart drop. It's over. Shunning, what do we do? Run. Liaoing turned around and started running for her life. Lone Moon felt a gust of wind blow past his ear. Then he disappeared. Holy shit. I'm going to kill you. Sun Shu raised his sword and flew toward him. Damn you. You're such a disloyal person. You brought. Before Lone Moon could finish speaking, the figure that had just disappeared flew back like a gust of wind. Just as Sun Shu's sword was about to hit him, the figure picked him up and ran out again. Sun Shu missed his target. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. Yet he could not detect their auras. You can run fast. Don't let me see. Before he could finish speaking, there was a whoosh. The two people from just now flew back again. This time, they passed him and rushed toward the front of the small building. They stopped, pulled up the tree, picked it up. Then, together with the winter spirit tree, they disappeared before his eyes again. Sun Shu. A while later, he only felt a pop in his head, as if something had snapped. You two little bastards, stop right there. Miao Shui River. I Ching. Although this trip to Yufeng Immortal Region is dangerous, it is also an opportunity for you. You have to do your best. Immortal Emperor Goyu smiled at the person in front of him. If you can help me find the 6-joint sword, I will reward you handsomely. Thank you, Immortal Emperor. I Ching glanced behind him. A moment later, he looked away and said, I'm entering this place to train. As for whether I can find the divine artifact or not, that depends on fate. I can't guarantee anything. Goyu's expression changed. He was a little annoyed that Lone Moon did not know what was good for him. A moment later, he recovered and said, Of course. Looking at the sky, he urged, It's getting late. You'd better leave as soon as possible. Wait a little longer. I Ching was still looking at the road he came from, but he still did not see any familiar figure. He could not help but frown. He had clearly agreed to meet Master at this hour. Why was she not here yet? Could she have gotten lost again? Immortal Emperor Guyu could not stand Lone Moon's attitude. Not only had Lone Moon repeatedly rejected his rewards at the Immortal Palace, he even said that he would consult Master about going to the Immortal region. Although he had agreed, he had lingered at Miao Shui River for half a day. Guyu had been an immortal emperor for a long time. It had been a long time since anyone had dared to disrespect him. Could it be that he was afraid of reneging on his promise?
Eat.
He was about to give him a few words to remind him not to be so arrogant just because he was a sword immortal, but Lone Moon suddenly spoke. Coming.
What?
Before Guyu could react, a figure flashed past him. The next moment, a strong gust of wind blew past him, covering his face with dust. Two figures appeared by the river. One was a man with a pale face that looked like he was about to vomit. The other was a woman in green. She was carrying a huge tree on her shoulder. The leaves on the tree looked a little familiar. Those were winter spirit leaves. An entire tree. Chapter 137. Master Dash, Chef. Shinning threw the tree into the water and pulled the two of them up. Hurry up and start the boat. Let's go, let's go. Master, what are you doing? Blarg, before he could finish, Lone Moon could not hold it in any longer. He hugged the floating tree trunk and vomited. This was the first time he realized that besides motion sickness, there was also running sickness. Shinning ran way too fast. There's no time to explain. Paddle, paddle. Shinning urged. I Ching looked confused, but he obediently conjured a wind seal. The three of them floated towards the river. The three of them, who were standing on the same tree, floated to the middle of the river. A furious roar came from the riverbank. You two rascals, don't run if you have the guts. Stop right there. A figure dressed in blue suddenly appeared on the riverbank. His immortal chi shocked even Guyu. His eyes widened in disbelief. Young Emperor's son, how did you? Didn't he never leave the Shandong immortal abode? Sun Shu ignored him. Instead, he picked up a leaf that had fallen from the riverbank and conjured a spell. The leaf instantly grew bigger, and he threw it into the water. It flew up and chased after the three of them. As he sailed the boat, he shouted, "Let's see where you can run to. Come back." Guyu. What was going on? Holy shit. Lone Moon turned back to look. His face, which had been green from vomiting, paled instantly. How did they catch up so quickly? Shinning, how did you manage to shake them off? He hurried I Ching. Chef, hurry up. Wind, don't stop. You're the one who kept telling me to slow down. Shinning rolled her eyes. Otherwise, they would not have caught up. Damn it, how can you call that running? That was clearly teleportation, okay? Lone Moon felt like puking. He took a deep breath and said, "What's more, why did you uproot the entire tree for no reason? You were the one who said there was a tree. That's why I went back to uproot it." Was I referring to the tree? I was referring to the leaves. Next time, can't you listen to what I have to say first? You're blaming me for a slip of the tongue? Forget it. Hurry up and help me row. Lone Moon nudged her. Hurry. We just have to enter Yufeng immortal territory. Only sword immortals can enter that place. He won't be able to catch up. As he spoke, he also formed a wind seal. Suddenly, a gust of wind swept past, and the entire tree was like an arrow that had been released from a bow. With a whoosh, it rushed towards the sword chi that filled the sky on the other side of the river. As long as he entered the Yufeng immortal territory, everything would be fine. As long as he entered, 5 minutes later, in Yufeng immortal realm. The three of them looked at the person in front of them, who was dressed in blue and had some dirt on his face, and was emitting a murderous aura. Lone Moon, Shinning, I Ching. The scene was as quiet as a chicken. Ha. For all, Ngun flips table. You must be King kidding me. Why didn't anyone tell him that Sun Shu was also a sword immortal? Run, keep running. Sun Shu's coquettish face was filled with anger. His eyes were like knives, stabbing at the three of them. Humph. I've never seen such shameless people like you. Not only did they destroy his supreme-grade immortal sword, they even dared to uproot his winter spirit tree. If he did not skin them alive, he would not be called Sun Shu. Ha ha ha, young Emperor Sun. If I said we didn't uproot your tree on purpose, would you believe me? The corner of Lonmun's mouth twitched as he laughed dryly. Humph. Sun Shu laughed coldly. It was as if there was a fire burning around him. If it were you, would you believe me? Lonmun was stumped. He had no choice but to move the tree next to him a little. How about we return the tree to you? Sun Shu's expression darkened even more. His smile grew colder. When I skin you alive, I will return the tree to you. This logic made so much sense that Lonmun actually had nothing to say. But, all right, this is indeed our fault. We are not despicable people who dare not admit it. Lonmun's voice deepened. He sighed deeply and bowed to the person opposite him. Young Emperor Sun, you should do whatever you want with this.
Humph.
It's best if you're willing to die. Sun Shu turned the sword in his hand and was about to attack. But before we do this, there's something I have to make clear. Lonmun suddenly interrupted. What is it? Lonmun's expression tightened. He took a step to the side and pointed a finger behind him. She was the one who crushed the immortal sword. She was the one who uprooted the tree. Escaping was also her idea. Every debt has a debtor. If you want to settle the score, look for her. Thank you. With that, he took 5 or 6 steps back, revealing a dumbfounded Shining. Shining. Son of a B*T. Sun Shu's anger was instantly focused on the person in front of him. He turned the sword in his hand and charged at Shining.
All right.
I'll deal with you first, you little bastard. Shen Ying's heart raced. She finally understood what it meant to betray one's teammates. A moment later, I say, Comrade Gardner, why can't we talk things over? Look, you were the one who asked me to crush the box. It's not of good quality. You can't blame me for that, can you? Shining sucked in a deep breath and said earnestly, and that tree, that was really a misunderstanding. There was a delay in my communication with Father Niao. I didn't want to uproot you at first. If you're worried, I'll plant it back for you later, all right? We're all reasonable people. We won't bully you, don't you think? Sun Shu's mouth twitched. He gritted his teeth, as if trying to suppress something. A moment later, he said,
Yes.
That's right. Shining nodded in satisfaction. Then what about the immortal sword? Forget it. That tree? I planted it. All right, you're really a good person. Thank you for your understanding. Let's see, what can't we talk things over? Well, Now, can you move your foot away from my chest? By talking things over, you mean beating me up first? Damn you, he really thought he was going to die just now. Who the hell was this person? Her strength was too terrifying. He had no chance of fighting back at all. Oh. Shining finally retracted her foot. Looking at the man on the ground whose face was already swollen, she thought for a moment and reached out a hand. Come, let me help. What else do you want? Sun Shu's face paled. He retreated a few steps, afraid that she would strike him again. Shining. I just wanted to help him up. Was there a need to react so strongly? The two onlookers. Seeing that the matter had been resolved, Lonmun finally recovered from the one-sided beating. He coughed and nudged I Ching, who was beside him. Aren't we looking for the sword? Where do we start? Indeed, there was nothing that could not be solved with a beating. If there was, then he would beat him up twice. I Ching looked up at the sky and took a step forward. It's already noon. I heard from Immortal Emperor Guyu that noon is when the yang qi is at its strongest. This is the safest time in Yufeng immortal territory.
So?
He turned around and scanned the crowd with a serious face. Master, are you hungry? Why don't we have lunch first before we set off? Lonmun. Sun Shu. Good chef. I like it. Chapter 138. This is a map of the immortal domain. The immortal emperor gave it to me before we set off. I Ching waved his hand to summon a map. Various regions were marked on it. Some were deserts, some were seas, and some were forests. But most of them were covered with sand and stones. But this is only a part of the immortal domain. No one knows how big it is. The places that are not marked on the map are places that no one has reached. Lone Moon looked at the map carefully and found that it was marked very clearly. Even what would appear in each place was marked out. Then did he tell you which direction to go? I Ching nodded and pointed to the center. He told me not to bother about the other places on the map. I was to follow the road in the center and head west. I was to get out of the map as soon as possible and go to places that no one has ever set foot in.
Why?
Lone Moon hesitated. Wasn't it safer to go to these known places? Of course it's for the six-joint sword. Sun Shu snorted. Almost everyone in the immortal realm has this map. Who knows how many sword immortals have been to these places? If there was a sword, it would have been found long ago. Naturally, we have to go somewhere else to look for it. This immortal emperor really cares about this sword. Come to think of it. Lone Moon frowned. He turned and glared at Sun Shu. Why are you still here? And he looked like he did not want to leave. Why can't I be here? Sun Shu's face flashed with panic. He immediately regained his composure and said confidently, although I did forgive Shining, I did not forgive you. You have not explained to me about my immortal sword and the winter spirit tree. Don't try to deny it. Anyway, I will be following you for the next 3 months until you restore my precious winter spirit tree. He subconsciously glanced at a certain someone who was leisurely eating a pastry. Here. Lone Moon plucked the radish from his thigh and stuffed it into Sun Shu's hands. You put the radish, Pui, you plant this vegetation spirit beside the tree. I guarantee that not only 1 tree, but even 100 trees will grow for you. The radish was the embodiment of vegetation spirit chi. As long as it was a plant, it would grow well beside it, whether it was the lower realm or the immortal world. Rar, rar, rar. Radish jumped back from Sun Shu's arms. It shook its leaves in disgust and made a sound of disdain. Bah! Who would want to go back and plant trees with this ugly thing?
No.
Sun Shu was also dissatisfied with his perfunctory method. He flicked his silky hair and said, Who knows if what you said is true or false? Before the tree is repaired, don't even think of escaping responsibility. With that said, he glanced at Shining again, intentionally or unintentionally. Besides, with that person's terrifying strength, perhaps, you want that sword too? Shining suddenly asked. Sun Shu jumped up in fright. His face turned pale, and he looked as if he had been exposed. Who wants the six-joint sword? It's just that I haven't been to the immortal region for too long, and I'm bored. That's why I'm kind enough to accompany you to take a look. Otherwise, you won't even know how you died. Shining stared at him for a while before saying, Oh. She did not say that it was the six-joint sword. Sun Shu. All right, we're full. It's time to set off. Since he was in the wrong, Lone Moon ignored Sun Shu. He stood up and dusted his robes. Let's go. Shining and I Ching stood up and summoned their immortal swords. They flew up on their swords and headed in the direction that Lone Moon had chosen. But it was not the path in the middle that the immortal emperor had instructed them to take. Sun Shu heaved a sigh of relief and chased after them on his sword. He had thought that although the immortal territory was vast, they would fly out of the area marked on the map in less than 3 days. For safety's sake, he had even personally set up a defensive array for them. He was afraid that something might happen to them once they reached the unknown area. But 5 days had passed, and they were still within the boundaries of the map. 10 days had passed, and they were still within the boundaries of the map. 15 days had passed, and they were still, an entire month had passed, and they were still going around in circles on the map. Moreover, they were going back and forth repeatedly. They even specially chose the areas with strange rocks. Once they found a strange rock, they would fly down and only do one thing: dig, dig, dig. When they found 10th level weapon refinement materials, they dug, dug when they found 8th-level weapon refinement materials. They dug when they found 6th-level weapon refinement materials. They dug when they found 2nd-level weapon refinement materials. They dug. They watched helplessly as rocks that were as tall as humans were dug until not a single one was left. Even the land around them was not spared. Lone Moon, do you have any more storage bags? There's a 1st-level moon crystal here. I Ching pointed to a rock at his feet and said, I have more than a dozen of them. Don't waste them. Yes. Lone Moon threw a bag over and instructed, hurry up and dig. If you don't have enough, I have more. He was already prepared. Enough. Sun Shu could not help but explode. He threw the immortal shovel in his hand onto the ground. How much longer are you going to dig for? Instead of looking for divine weapons, they came to dig for rocks. And why did they have to dig for him as well? Are you here to dig for weapon refinement materials or to look for swords? The three of them paused. Even Shening, who was sitting leisurely at the side and nibbling on a fruit, turned to look at them. The three of them paused, then replied in unison. We're here to dig for materials. 3 Sun Shu. They actually admitted it. What kind of place did they think this was? Our invincible sect is in urgent need of immortal weapons of various grades. Is there a problem? Lone Moon replied. Was it wrong for them to rely on their own abilities to get out of poverty? He was actually speechless. No, he could not let them continue digging like this. Otherwise, there would be no land left in the immortal territory. He took a deep breath and his eyes darted around. Then, he suppressed his impatience and stepped forward to persuade them. There's no point in digging here. Although only sword immortals can enter the immortal territory, there are already no good materials to be found in these outer areas. This kind of 1st-level and 2nd-level weapon refinement materials are not hard to find outside. It's not hard to find them outside, so why do you have to look for them? All the high-grade materials were inside, not to mention the 10th-grade materials. Not to mention 10th-level materials. Even supreme-grade materials like the Skyfire Stone are not non-existent. Lone Moon looked around and thought about it carefully. Indeed, he found that the closer they got to the edge of the map, the rarer the materials they saw. Although he had always been cautious in doing things. But they were here to gain experience. It would not be right if they did not go in and try their luck. Moreover, after digging for so many days, they had almost all the materials they needed. It was time to set off. All right, let's not care about these 1st and 2nd-level materials. Let's go. He waved his hand, and the three of them mounted their swords and flew towards the unknown area. Sun Shu heaved a sigh of relief. He had finally convinced these money-grubbing people who would not even let go of rocks. After digging for so many days, he had almost forgotten how dangerous this place was. But very quickly, he discovered another problem. Why did we stop here? Sun Shu looked ahead, then turned back to look at the few people who had suddenly stopped to rest. It's dark. I Ching took out a blanket and gently covered the person beside him. With a matter-of-fact expression, he said in a low voice, It's time to sleep. Haven't you all become immortals? Rest my ass. Which immortal needs to sleep? Shening needs it. Lone Moon pointed to the person who had already fallen asleep. But she doesn't need to sleep for the whole night. No matter how tired she is, she just needs to rest for a few minutes, right? He looked dissatisfied. Don't forget that this immortal territory is only open for 3 months. No, we have to wake her up. No. The moment he got up, I Ching and Lone Moon flew forward at the same time and pressed him down. I Ching, we can't wake Master. Lone Moon, if you don't want to die. Sun Shu's heart tightened for no reason. What the hell? Just as he was thinking, the ground suddenly shook. Not far away, a roar pierced the night sky. Roar. Chapter 139. Between the originally neat and tidy mountain rocks, a blazing flame shot up into the sky. The ground began to shake violently. Almost reflexively, Lone Moon quickly conjured a series of hand seals. An array was formed in an instant. It turned into a transparent isolation array and enveloped the person on the ground. In the next moment, there was a series of crashing sounds as the mountain rocks rolled down. A huge object suddenly rushed out from the ground. Its entire body was burning with flames. It was as big as a mountain, covering the sky and sun. It opened its mouth and let out another angry roar. It was as if the entire world was shaking. Lone Moon and I Ching subconsciously turned to look at the person in the array behind them. Both of them heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he reacted quickly. His voice could not pass through the isolation array. He did not wake up. What kind of beast is this? I Ching frowned. He had never seen a beast like this before. It was so big that he could not see it clearly, especially the flames surrounding its body. One look, and one could tell that it was not an ordinary fire. The moment it appeared, the surroundings had already been scorched. Even immortals like them could feel the heat from such a distance. No, this is not a beast. Lone Moon's expression darkened. He pointed at the huge object that had already burned half the sky red. Quick, look inside the fire. I Ching subconsciously released his divine perception to take a closer look. He saw that the deviant flames were actually covered with layers of what looked like metal armor. There were faint talismans flashing inside, and something like a sequin was flashing continuously. This, rather than saying it was a spirit beast, it was more like a weapon. But the sound just now was clearly that of a beast. Could it be? I Ching was shocked. Understanding dawned on him. He shouted, "It's an artifact spirit." This artifact had actually developed sentience. It was not easy for anything to become sentient. What's more, weapons were inanimate objects. Yet it could actually develop sentience. This proved that it was not ordinary to begin with. Perhaps it was a divine artifact. Why did we encounter it? This is the Myriad Sword Box. Sun Shu raised his hand and set up a defensive array to block the raging flames. He shouted, "This is the artifact spirit guarding this place. Its original form is a divine artifact. This fire is the 9 underworld flames. Not even divine beings can withstand it, much less immortals. Ordinary water elemental immortal spells are completely useless against it. We can only attack it forcefully, especially when they're still." Before he could finish, there was a ringing sound. Thousands of immortal swords suddenly rushed out of the huge body wrapped in flames. Each of them carried a sharp sword chi, and the wind blades blotted out the sky as they attacked them. Myriad swords formation. Moreover, they were not condensed from immortal energy. Every single one of them was a real sword. I Ching's expression darkened. He activated all the immortal chi in his body and turned to Lone Moon. "Look after Master." With that said, he flew up into the air. His sword chi turned into a dragon and rushed towards the sky full of sword chi. "Got it." The corner of Lone Moon's mouth twitched, and he took a few steps back. At the same time, he waved his sword to block the rain of swords that he did not manage to block in time. Not a single sword was allowed to enter the isolation array behind him. "Wait, what are you doing?" Sun Shu was stunned. He looked at the two of them anxiously. "What time is it? You guys even protected her while she slept. This is the artifact spirit of a divine artifact, not the ordinary sword chi outside. You can't block it." Divine artifacts were powerful weapons. What's more, this one was sentient. Even the 10 celestial emperors would not be able to defeat it. "We'd better wake Shining up quickly. Perhaps we can still win." As she spoke, she turned to walk towards the isolation array.
No.
Lone Moon's face paled. He turned the sword in his hand, and a row of spirit swords appeared beside Sun Shu. Then he flew over and grabbed Sun Shu back. In a serious tone that he had never used before, he said, "Trust me, the consequences of waking her up are even more terrifying than that of an artifact spirit." "What the hell?" Sun Shu was stunned. Just as he was about to say something, the ground beneath his feet shook. A large number of immortal swords suddenly emerged from the ground and flew towards the direction behind them. Oh no! Lone Moon's heart skipped a beat. It was too late for him to turn around and block the immortal swords. He could only watch as the immortal swords emerged from the ground and destroyed the isolation array he had set up. That was not the end of it. The gigantic artifact spirit suddenly spat out a flame that forced I Ching to retreat. Then, it turned around and lunged towards I Ching. It opened its huge mouth and bit down. "Master!" I Ching cried out in shock. However, he could only watch as the huge divine artifact swallowed Shining, who was behind him, along with a radius of more than 100 feet around her, with a rumble. All that was left was a scorched pit that was more than 10 feet wide. Roar! A loud roar reverberated through the night sky. Sun Shu. Eaten? I Ching and Lone Moon's faces paled. It was as if they had been frozen in place. "I told you to wake her up." Sun Shu looked at the two of them sympathetically. Otherwise, she wouldn't have run. Before he could finish speaking, Lone Moon suddenly shouted. He turned around and started running. At the same time, I Ching, who was still in midair, also ran on his sword. In a flash, he disappeared. What was going on? Weren't they sad about their companion's death? Why were they running? Sun Shu was confused. He did not have time to react. All of a sudden, the artifact spirit in front of him shook. Then there was a loud rumble. It sounded like something was collapsing. The gigantic divine artifact, which was so tall that its top could not be seen, suddenly collapsed like a building that had been blown up. In an instant, it became a pile of scrap metal. The immortal swords that had filled the sky all fell to the ground like dumplings being thrown into a pot. With a loud tearing sound, the divine artifact on the ground suddenly split open. The divine artifact's original source, golden light, gushed out. From the center of the golden light, a person slowly walked out. Golden light filled the sky, accompanied by an angry roar. So noisy. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt something overwhelming pouncing on him, causing him to be unable to breathe. Killing intent. What a strong killing intent. Immense fear filled his entire body. His entire body turned cold. There was only one word left in his mind. Die. Suddenly, he understood why the two people reacted the way they did. He could only do the same thing now. Run. He used all the immortal chi in his body and rushed in the direction that the two people had disappeared. He used his cultivation to the maximum and almost instantly caught up with the two people's speed. He only hoped that he could make it. There was a flash of white light and a familiar figure appeared in front of the three people. The three people. That was way too fast. Shining stood there quietly. She was expressionless, but the three of them felt a chill in their hearts. She narrowed her eyes and looked straight at the person on the right. She reached out. I Ching shivered and pulled out a piece of barbecued meat. He shouted, "Master, want supper?" Her hand paused. She changed her target instantly and looked at the person beside her. "I have pastries. Do you want some?" Lone Moon immediately held out a bowl. Fortunately, he had secretly hidden a plate for dinner. Her hand paused again and reached out to the third person, Sun Shu. "Son of a B***T. Wait. What are you doing? Wake up and look carefully." "I'm Sun Shu."
No.
"Help." Chapter 140. Early morning. When Shining woke up, Father Neo and Chef were digging something in a pile of scrap metal. The more they dug, the more excited Father Neo became. He smiled like a sunflower. "This thing is actually made of supreme-grade materials. Holy shit, this source is actually heavenly firestone."
Keep it.
I Ching, you still have storage bags, right? Hurry up and pack it. Pack as much as you can. Shining stretched lazily and waved a hand in greeting. "Good morning." The two who were picking up the scraps suddenly trembled and turned to look at her. There was an indescribable strangeness in their expressions. What's wrong? Why were they looking at her like that? Shining went forward and kicked the pile of rubbish. "What's this? Where did it come from? She didn't seem to be here last night." "Master, you're awake?" I Ching walked over and asked tentatively. She nodded subconsciously. "It came from underground," Lone Moon replied. Lone Moon replied, "It's a divine artifact that has developed sentience. Although it's already destroyed, its materials can still be reused."
Oh.
Shunning did not continue asking. She looked around and suddenly said, Where's the gardener? Why did he disappear? Did he go home to plant trees?" I Ching, Lone Moon. The two did not answer. They just looked at her strangely for a while. Then they looked down at her feet. "What's wrong?" Shunning felt a little uncomfortable. "Why are you looking at me like that?" She subconsciously followed their gaze and looked down. "What's under my feet? Holy shit. Why was there really a person here?" And he was stuck in a crack in the ground, the kind that was swollen like a ball. Shunning squatted down and grabbed the person's collar. With a pull, there was a sound. She pulled the person out like pulling a carrot. On a closer look, it was actually the gardener. "Why did you dig into the crack? For no reason. Look at your swollen." Even if he wanted to cool down, he couldn't be like this. If not for that familiar blue robe, she wouldn't even recognize him. "I say, you. Don't come over." Sun Shu instantly jumped up and retreated a few meters away. He raised his face that no longer had the slightest hint of coquettishness and shrank back desperately. "Stay away from me. Do you hear me? If you dare to come over, I will die in front of you." Shunning, what a terrifying threat, straight face, chef. She nudged the person beside her and lowered her voice. "What's wrong with him? How did this happen all of a sudden?" "No, nothing." I Ching's mouth twitched. "Maybe. I didn't sleep well last night." He had been beaten up for an entire night for no reason. "Oh." Shunning nodded. It would be a wonder if he could sleep well in a crack. She was about to ask for more details. Lone Moon suddenly said, "All right, that's enough. We're almost done." He glanced at Sun Shu, who could only be described as a coward, and added, "We'll set off once Sun Shu has recovered." Actually, Shunning had only woken up for about 10 minutes last night before falling asleep again. However, perhaps because he had been beaten up so badly, Sun Shu refused to come out after being punched into the crack. Lone Moon and I Ching had wanted to help him, but he had panicked and even made a solemn vow. "I'm not coming out. You two rascals, don't try to trick me into coming out to get beaten up." He did not even dare to regulate his own breathing and forced himself to stay awake until Shunning woke up. This psychological trauma was unparalleled. Hearing Lone Moon's instructions, Sun Shu regained his composure and retreated a few steps cautiously before sitting down to meditate. He had never been beaten up so badly before. If he had not been smart enough to hide in the crack and pretend to be dead, his immortal bones would have been broken by her. Wasn't it because he had been woken up? Her sleeping habits were too scary. Sun Shu had the cultivation of a young emperor after all. After meditating for an hour, his injuries were completely healed. Shunning took the opportunity to have breakfast. "Let's set off. The unknown region is just ahead. Everyone, be extra careful," Lone Moon said. They had just arrived, and they had already encountered a divine artifact that had developed sentience. Who knew what they would encounter later on? He flew up on his sword, and the four of them flew forward. In front of them was still a barren desert with no end in sight. All around them were all kinds of rocks, and there were very few plants. But the strange thing was, compared to the other areas that were full of weapon refinement materials, this place seemed especially clean. There were no first or second level materials, much less high-grade weapon refinement ores, let alone divine artifacts. The four of them flew in this unknown region for 4 to 5 days, but still found nothing. Lone Moon was getting a little anxious. If the situation continued like this, they might as well go back. "Father Nyo," Shunning suddenly spoke. "Why are we back again?" "What?" Lone Moon replied. "What do you mean back?" Before he could finish speaking, he followed her line of sight and was instantly shocked. Holy shit! It was a pile of broken bones. The bones of demon beasts. It was not strange for bones to appear in such a barren desert, but the point was they were thrown there by them during dinner 2 days ago. Lone Moon directly flew down and took a closer look. It was indeed the pile that they left behind 2 days ago. But this was clearly not the place where they rested that day. Could it be? His expression changed, and he hurriedly looked at the person beside him. I Ching, 5 elements array. I Ching nodded and swept the long sword in his hand. Immediately, 5 swords formed from immortal chi were inserted into 5 different positions. Lomun's hands conjured a seal and set up an array. Instantly, a few rays of light lit up. The scenery around them shook and the ground distorted. In a short while, all kinds of different things appeared. There were withered leaves and weeds, but most of them were fruit shells, residues, broken bones, and other rubbish. They were all left behind by them in the past few days. They were all within a radius of more than 10 meters. Some were even less than a few feet away.
How could this be?
Could it be that they had been going around in the same place these few days? The key was that they did not notice anything. It's the spirit zither array. Sun Shu suddenly opened his mouth and took a step forward. The spirit zither array can create a circular barrier. No matter how far you go in, you will always return to the same place. But the scenery inside is constantly changing. We should be inside this barrier. As he spoke, he conjured a seal with one hand and muttered something. His hand flashed, and he flew forward. Instantly, a white light flashed in front of them. A transparent barrier suddenly appeared in the originally empty sky. It was like a transparent membrane, covering their eyes. Not far above them, something golden was gathering. They took a closer look and saw that it was actually a 4-leaf clover pattern. This should be the entrance to the center of the immortal realm. Sun Shu's eyes lit up, as if he could not suppress his excitement. He took out a winter spirit leaf from his side and threw it at the pattern in the air. Immediately, the barrier in front of them shook and slowly split in the middle. In a short while, it formed the shape of an arched door. This is the entrance. Sun Shu's face was full of joy. He pointed at the arched door and said as he walked, "Let's go in quickly." "Oh," Shuning suddenly said. "You've been here before." Sun Shu froze. Chapter 141. Ha 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 ha, Sun Shu laughed dryly. After a while, he replied stiffly, "How could I have been here before? Ha ha, I was just guessing." "That's right, I was just guessing." Ha ha ha, the 3 of them stared at him. After a while, they replied in unison, "Oh, Sun Shu." What did they mean by "oh"? Did they believe him or not? Sun Shu panicked. Oh no, were they going to be exposed? "Let's go." Shuning suddenly stepped forward.
Huh?
"Didn't you say it was the entrance?" She waved at them as she walked towards the arched door. "Chef, Father Nyo, let's go." After saying that, he stepped inside first. The other 2 glanced at each other before following suit. Sun Shu was left with a confused look on his face. That was it? Weren't they going to get to the bottom of it? Why did he suddenly feel a little disappointed? Glancing at the 3 of them who had already entered, he clenched his fists by his side and followed them. The moment they passed through the arched door, the scenery in front of them changed completely, as if a curtain had been lifted. A scorching aura hit them in the face. There were deviant fires and lava everywhere. The temperature was extraordinarily high. All around them was scorched earth. In front of them was a volcano that reached the clouds. It stood between heaven and earth. There were all kinds of swords stuck in the ground. Rather than calling it a volcano, it was more like sword catacomb. Lone Moon exclaimed subconsciously. Looking at the immortal swords everywhere, he wondered how much they would cost. It was a pity that these were all immortal swords that had already been sealed. Unless they recognized a new owner, they would not leave with anyone. They might as well be materials. As there were too many deviant fires on the ground, the few of them had to continue flying on their swords. Everywhere they passed, there were all kinds of sounds of swords humming. It seemed that no one had entered this sword catacomb for a long time. That was why these immortal swords were reacting so strongly. "The sword room is over there. Let's go." Sun Shu pointed at the bottom of the huge volcano. Seeing the 3 of them turn to look at him in confusion, his heart sank. He immediately added, "Should?" "Oh," Shuning replied. She pulled Chef along and flew in the direction Sun Shu had pointed. After flying for a while, The surrounding temperature dropped instantly. Only then did they see that the bottom of the mountain fire was abruptly surrounded by a circle of ice. It was like a fault, separating the inside and outside worlds. They flew down and landed on the ice. Sure enough, there was an entrance not far in front of them. It was a door made of ice, and it was wide open, leading to the inside of the volcano. It was a bit far away, so they couldn't see what was inside. Just as they were about to go over, a few popping sounds came from below. The ground shook, and transparent bubbles as tall as a human suddenly emerged from the layer of ice. It floated in midair and instantly filled the entire ice surface. This ice can blow bubbles? Is it made of soap and water? Don't go over there. It's the 1,000-ray array. Sun Shu frowned and hurriedly stopped them. I didn't expect that there would be a 1,000-light array in a place like this. These look like bubbles, but they're formed by the condensation of immortal qi and are indestructible. Each of them has a sword qi sealed inside. Once you touch them, you will be trapped inside. What's more, it can absorb attacks of any element. We'd better go around. What are you doing? As he spoke, he saw I Ching unsheath his sword and walk straight toward the group of bubbles. Wait! Sword techniques alone can't break through. Before he could finish speaking, he saw I Ching's immortal qi explode. His entire body shone with golden light, and in an instant, a huge sword was formed. Sword qi filled the sky, and I Ching waved his hand. There was a loud bang, followed by a cracking sound. All the bubbles and the layer of ice on the ground broke into pieces. The entire 1,000-light array collapsed in an instant. It broke. This was too fast? What happened to being able to absorb attacks of any kind? You must be kidding me. Master said, one strong man can defeat 10. As if sensing his confusion, I Ching turned to look at Shining and said, Master, we can go now. Oh, thank you for your hard work. Shining nodded and walked over the broken ice with a natural expression. Sun Shu. Lone Moon patted Sun Shu's shoulder and said with an understanding expression, You'll get used to it. It's just a cheat. Haven't you seen the big one already? Why make a fuss about it? The group then walked into the volcano. It was a very long tunnel. It was pitch black inside, as if no one had been here for a long time. The tunnel was filled with black dust. Lone Moon turned his hand and conjured a fire seal. The tunnel immediately lit up. As they walked in, they observed the materials around them. Let's see where we can dig? It was a pity that although the tunnel was old, it was clearly well designed. There was not a single crack in it, and it had no commercial value. The deeper they went, the smoother the walls became. The entire interior of the volcano looked like it had been hollowed out. It was very spacious inside, and there were even rows of huge stone pillars. They could not see the end of the tunnel, and they had no idea how big it was. Be careful. Sun Shu called out anxiously. He pulled Lone Moon, who was walking in front, back. Then there was a clanging sound. An immortal sword stabbed into the ground at his feet. Lone Moon jumped. What's going on? Just as he finished speaking, the immortal sword seemed to have triggered some kind of switch. There was a series of swishing sounds. Suddenly, countless immortal swords rushed out from all directions, spinning like a tornado. Huge amounts of sword qi rushed towards them. They had no choice but to take a few steps back. There were a few flashes of light inside, and their surroundings suddenly lit up. Only then did they see the situation in front of them clearly.
Swords.
There were immortal swords everywhere. Countless immortal swords seemed to have come to life, dancing in the vast space in front of them. It was as if they could cut everything into pieces if they took a step closer. It's a sword array again. Lone Moon frowned. It did not look like it would be easy to deal with. This is the myriad phenomenon sword array, Sun Shu said. Myriad phenomenon. Lone Moon was shocked. His expression darkened. Is this the legendary strongest sword array, the one that can kill even divine beings? He had seen this array in some ancient books that he had dug out from the Qing Tong immortal abode. But wasn't that just a legend? That should be it. Sun Shu nodded. I don't know how to break this array either. It looks like we'll have to put in a lot of effort to get through. Oh, then. Lone Moon looked at the densely packed sword array in front of him once more. Then he turned around and said, "Let's go back."
What? Wait.
Sun Shu pulled him back, his face full of disbelief. "You're giving up just like that? Are you sure you don't want to go in and take a look?" "That's right." Lone Moon nodded matter-of-factly. "Didn't you say we can't get through? It's about time. We should go back. What's more, we didn't see any useful materials along the way. Who knows if there are any inside? Rather than wasting time here, they might as well go back and pick up some leftovers." He waved at the other two and said, "Let's go, Shining Yiqing." Chapter 142. Seeing that the three of them were about to leave, Sun Shu was stunned. He blocked them once again. "Don't do that. We're already at the entrance. Why don't we go in and take a look? Who knows, there might be even better materials inside. Such a low probability of success is not worth investing in." Sun Shu looked determined. Did they have to be so straightforward? This was obviously a treasure trove. Were these three stupid? Why would they go back to mining? Wait a minute. Sun Shu's expression darkened. He gritted his teeth as if he had made up his mind. "I'll tell you the truth. There must be a treasure in such a powerful sword array. Maybe it's the six-joint sword." The three of them stared blankly at each other before replying in unison. Oh.
Oh?
What did they mean by, oh? And then? Do you have a recorder? What do you mean? Sight. Lone Moon sighed and rolled his eyes. "I mean, even if there's the six-joint sword inside, what has it got to do with us?"
Huh?
That's the six-joint sword. Didn't you come here to look for? Pooey. Even if you didn't come here to look for the sword. But don't you want it? It's a divine weapon. A divine weapon. Aren't you tempted at all? "I don't want it." Lone Moon's expression was calm. Even the other two looked disinterested. What's more, aren't divine weapons only used by young emperors and above? What are we doing here? Are we going to be beaten up by the entire immortal realm? Are you stupid? Sun Shu was speechless. What was going on? Suddenly, he felt that Gushu was right. What's more, this stupid sword array looks very troublesome. Lone Moon glanced at the array in front of them. "Don't you want Shining to do it? But this is a volcano. She can't control herself. If she doesn't break the array, she might even cause the mountain to collapse. Let's not talk about whether she will hurt me by accident. Are you sure you can find some stupid sword in the ruins? Shining. Why do I feel like I'm being looked down upon?" Air. Gushu's expression darkened. That was exactly what he was thinking. This sword array is indeed unbreakable. All right, let's go. Let's go back to mining. There was only slightly more than a month left. He had to hurry up and earn money. Lone Moon turned and was about to leave when he realized that Yiqing suddenly stopped moving. Instead, he turned to look at the sword array behind him. "What are you doing? This array is so powerful." Yiqing clenched his fists and turned to Shining. "Master, can I try to break the array?"
Huh?
Shining paused. "You're crazy," Lone Moon objected. "Didn't you hear what he said? This is the 10,000 images sword formation. It can even kill gods. Are you courting death by entering? That's why I want to give it a try." His expression became even more resolute. Cultivating the way of the sword has always been difficult. Facing difficulties is the way of the sword. I came to the celestial region to gain experience. Now that the tribulation was right in front of them, there was no reason for them to retreat. "Master, please allow your disciple to try and break the formation." "Oh." Shining tilted her head.
"Go then." "Shining."
"Thank you, Master." Yiqing turned his hand and condensed a sword with immortal chi. He turned and rushed into the sword array.
"Wait."
Lone Moon did not stop him. He turned and glared at Shining. "Are you crazy? Aren't you asking him to go in and die?" "Father Nyo, calm down." Shining patted his shoulder. "Didn't he say that? If he doesn't force himself, he won't know how awesome he can be."
"Did he say that just now?"
"Wait." It was rare for Shuning to be so straightforward. Could it be that you've already seen that he has the strength to break the array?
No.
Shuning said seriously. I'm talking nonsense. Lone Moon. Sun Shu. Damn it. Bam! A strange sound came from within the sword array. I Ching, who had rushed into the sword array, was hit by an immortal sword. A wound appeared on his body and blood flowed like a fountain. His body, which had been moving like a shadow, also slowed down. He was drowned by the sword wind. After losing this advantage, more and more wounds appeared on his body. The sword array moved faster and faster. Even the sword shadows could not be seen. There was no time to condense immortal chi.
Shit.
Lone Moon and Sun Shu's faces darkened. They finally understood why even divine beings could not stop this array. It was really too fast. If this continued, I Ching would be cut into pieces by the sword array. No way. Shuning, in 2 more minutes, if he can't break the array, you go in and save him.
Oh.
She nodded. The situation inside was getting worse. The sword array moved faster and faster. I Ching had completely given up on defense. He attacked as a form of defense. But this caused the injuries on his body to multiply. The more Lone Moon watched, the more anxious he became. This guy was really going all out. You have to think of something. Help him. Lone Moon nudged Shuning beside him. Aren't you his master? This is a good opportunity. Teach him. Teach what? How would I know? He glared at her. Don't you have a glib tongue? Once you teach him, you cheat. Say what you said in the past. Defeat 10 with 1 strength? Become 1 with the sword? Yes, continue. That's all. That was all she had read in martial arts novels. Holy shit. Everything that happened in the past was definitely a scam, right? He hurriedly looked at the person in the array and found that the situation was getting worse. I'm telling you, this sword array is ever-changing. Any move is meaningless. You'd better teach him something concrete. If his injuries get worse, no one will cook for you. Shuning was stunned. Her eyes widened. She stepped forward and looked at the flying swords. Teaching disciples was so troublesome. What should she do? What should she do? How would she know what move? Cough, that chef. She suddenly remembered a saying. She said loudly, Have you heard of this saying? Swordsmanship is natural. No move is better than having a move. No move is better than having a move. The figure in the array suddenly stopped. So, thousands of immortal swords rushed towards him, piercing through his body. Blood splattered everywhere. Lone Moon. Sun Shu. Holy shit, Shuning. Are you here to help or to cause trouble? You can't teach blindly like this. No move is better than having a move. Asking him to stop at this time is asking him to die. Boom! Before Lone Moon could finish speaking, a huge burst of sword chi burst out from within the sword array. The figure that had been pierced into a sieve by the sword suddenly disappeared like a phantom. The immortal swords in the entire sword array suddenly stopped and began to shake violently. The buzzing sound of the swords filled the entire space. These swords seemed to have met their natural enemy. In a short while, they fell to the ground like dumplings. They filled half the space. The familiar sword intent was everywhere like the air. It was so oppressive that one could not breathe. I Ching stood high up on the pile of swords. The sword array was broken. How the F***CK could this happen?
His sword chi.
Sun Shu muttered in a daze. It was more than twice as strong as before. Indeed, sword immortals had to cultivate hard. He had never seen such a huge amount of sword chi. Even the sword chi on his body seemed to be suppressed. His cultivation was clearly higher. No, the immortal chi on his body was suppressed by him on purpose. He was having an epiphany. Thank you for your guidance, Master. I Ching's figure flashed and he returned to Shunying's side. He knelt down on one knee and looked up at her excitedly. His white robes were still stained with blood. How are your injuries? Shuning asked. Can you cook? It's all right. It's just a small injury. Master really cared about him.
He was happy.
Oh, that's good.
She was relieved.
Lone Moon, son of A, B asterisk T. Why did he have to say so much just now? He knew that Shening was an epiphany to I Ching. The sword array has been broken. Let's go. I Ching reminded them. He turned and swept away the sword mountain in front of him, clearing a path. Only then did everyone see that the opposite side was a sea of red. There was hot air coming from it, and the sound of lava bubbling could be heard. The center of the mountain is inside. Sun Shu's eyes lit up. He hurried in that direction. The three of them followed. There was a huge space inside. There was lava everywhere. Occasionally, a few flames would shoot out from the surface. The flames were very special. They were purple and had some black spots. Above the lava, there was a stone bridge leading to the center. It was tens of meters high, but it could not block the heat of the flames. It was as if they could burn everything in the world. Lone Moon subconsciously wanted to set up an isolation array for them. But he heard Sun Shu, who was the first to enter, exclaim, "How could this be?" Chapter 143. Sun Shu was standing in the middle of a circular platform. On the platform was a metal table that looked like a casting table. A ball of black flames was burning brightly on the table. In the middle of the flames, there was a faint golden light flashing. The few of them walked closer and realized that there was an illusory image of a sword floating in the light. It rippled like water, faintly discernible. Sun Shu stood at the side in shock, his face full of disbelief. He muttered, "How can this be?
How can this be?"
He took a few steps back, his eyes full of disappointment. He laughed self-deprecatingly and said, No wonder the clan rules say that no one can obtain this sword. So that's how it is." Lone Moon stepped forward to look at the sword in the flames. Suddenly, he thought of something and frowned. Could this be the six-joint sword? Sun Shu paused and clenched his fists by his side. Then he slowly nodded. How can that be? The thing in the flames was clearly the shadow of a sword. It's the Mirage Divine spell. Before Lone Moon could finish, Sun Shu explained in disappointment, "This sword is sealed in the void of chaos. So although it can be seen, there is no way to retrieve it. So this is the power of creation that can split the heavens and split the earth. Because it was sealed in the void of chaos, unless one had the ability to break through realms, there was no way to retrieve it." "You want it?" Shening suddenly asked. Sun Shu laughed self-deprecatingly. "Everyone who enters the immortal realm wants the sword.
Oh.
It's a pity that this sword is not in this realm. No one."
Wait.
"What are you doing?" He turned his head, only to see Shening suddenly reach out towards the flames. "This is immortal origin fire. You can't." Before he could finish speaking, Shen Ying's hand had already passed through the black flames. She tightened her grip and with a whoosh, she pulled the sword out of the flames. In an instant, golden light shone brightly and thick immortal qi filled the entire space. She took it out? How could this be? Shening looked at the sword in her hand. Apart from the yellow, it did not seem to be anything special. She threw the sword to Sun Shu and said, "Here."
Huh.
She gave it to him. Was he hallucinating? He looked at the sword in his hand with a dumbfounded expression. When he raised his head to look at the person opposite him, he realized that she had already turned around to look at the person behind her. "Father Nyo, I think this fire is not bad. Master, this is the essence flame of the immortal world. No other deviant flames can compare to it." "Oh, do you want to bring it back?" Lone Moon rolled his eyes at them. "Isn't that obvious? Of course we have to bring it back. The key is that this fire can burn anything. There's nothing to store it in. Master, this table doesn't seem to be burning. Could it be that it can restrain this fire? Why don't we take the table with us? I Ching, do you have any more space in your storage bag? There's only half of the last one left. I wonder if it's enough? Whatever, let's put it on first." Thus, the three of them each took a corner of the storage bag and walked toward the exceptional flame platform. They looked like they wanted to take the pot away with them. Sun Shu. Hey, hey, hey. The divine artifact is right here. Why don't you take a look at it? Why were they all staring at that ball of fire and drooling? Was the fire more important than the divine artifact? Why did he suddenly feel like he was going blind? The corner of his mouth twitched. He glanced at Shining, then lowered his head to look at the sword in his hand. Finally, he could not help but call out, Shining.
Huh?
The person who was about to instruct them to move the table turned back. You really gave this sword to me?
Yes.
Shining nodded. Was there a problem? She did not guarantee it. Sun Shu still could not believe it. He reminded her again. This is a divine artifact. She had given it to him so easily. Even the other two did not seem to have any objections. I know. You don't want it? He was at a loss for words.
He was even more conflicted now.
She knew from the start that he had followed them because he wanted to use her to find the sword. He had clearly suspected him the entire way here, and he had already made preparations to fight to the death if he really found him. But she actually gave it to him, just like that. There was no hesitation or reluctance. She threw it to him, as if it was a bun.
Why?
Huh. Shining paused. She looked even more confused. If you want it, I'll give it to you. Does it need a reason? He was about to ask more questions when Lone Moon urged, Shining, help me open the bag. Otherwise, how are we going to put it in?
Oh.
Shining turned around and tugged at the storage bag. Sun Shu clenched his fists. Looking at the three busy people, he chuckled. A while later, the table is not restraining the fire. It's the living soil on it. What the hell was this uncontrollable urge to remind them? Sun Shu took 2 steps forward and pushed aside the people surrounding the table. He grabbed a handful of yellow soil from the table and threw it into the fire. The black fire immediately shrunk into a ball. The soil immediately surrounded the fire. Within seconds, it formed a yellow ball of soil and landed on the table. That'll do. He handed over the yellow ball wrapped in flames.
Wow.
The three of them exclaimed like country bumpkins. So this kind of technology existed. Lone Moon took it. Indeed, the deviant fire wrapped in the living soil was no longer warm. It was even slightly cold. He immediately kept it in his storage bag. Glancing at the table beside him, he narrowed his eyes and waved to the 2 people behind him. Continue carrying it.
Take it all away.
Don't waste it. How poor are you guys? The corner of his mouth twitched as he watched the few of them shove the table into their storage bags. Suppressing the veins on his forehead, he took a deep breath and took a step forward. He walked to the center of the room and held the god artifact in his hands. His eyes darkened as he said, This sword.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Shining replied subconsciously. Do you want to know why I want this weapon? Sun Shu clenched his fists. Suddenly, he had the urge to say something. The 3 people turned to look at him. Sun Shu took a deep breath. Although he had chased them all the way here in the name of the winter spirit leaf, these people had been very loyal to him. They knew what he wanted, but did not attack him. What's more, they had given him the sword so readily. He should not continue to hide it. Otherwise, he would be a villain. Actually, I don't want to know. Before he could finish, the 3 of them spoke in unison.
Huh. Huh.
Shining, that's so troublesome. One look, and I can tell you're going to tell a long story. It's almost dinner time. It's not good for your stomach if you're late. Lone Moon, we're not that close. Why should we be interested in your tragic past? If we have the time, we might as well continue looking for materials. I Ching, it's time to prepare dinner. What does Master want to eat tonight? Sun Shu, what the hell? Can you guys at least have some normal reactions? For all. Chapter 144. The Euphome Immortal region is not an immortal region left behind by the ancient gods. It is the residence of the Flowing Flame clan. The so-called 10 Directions divine weapon is not a weapon left behind by the gods, but a sacred weapon forged by my clan. Originally, it was just a divine artifact used to suppress this immortal region and maintain the stability of this realm. My ancestors were born in the chaos. This immortal region is a world created by them after many generations. Although it is outside the 3,000 worlds, it is a world of its own. My clansmen are born with the ability to form objects. Our clansmen are born to be good at forging magic weapons. But it was also because of this ability that brought about a calamity. The weapons we forged became stronger and stronger, even possessing the ability to split open the heavens. Because of this, our clan's name shook the three realms. The immortal energy of the ancient immortal world was not like it is today, no different from the divine realm. Immortals and the divine race often had conflicts. The celestial emperor of the immortal world asked us to forge a batch of weapons that could restrain the divine race. Although we did not agree, we did forge a few weapons that were powerful enough to restrain the divine race. This caused the divine race to be furious, and, of course, they attacked us. Although we had the support of the divine weapon, our clansmen were too few and naturally could not resist the powerful divine race. That battle was very tragic. The entire Yufeng immortal region was destroyed, and our clan was almost wiped out. Only a small number of clansmen escaped to the 3,000 worlds. Yufeng immortal region fell to the immortal world. To protect our heritage, our clan leader sealed the abilities of our clansmen into our bloodlines to avoid the divine race's pursuit. We looked forward to the day when our descendants could return here and regain the glory of our ancestors. But most of the clansmen who escaped entered the mortal world. The spirit energy in the mortal world is thin, and it is difficult to ascend, let alone awaken a bloodline. 100,000 years ago, I awakened my bloodline memories by chance. That's how I found the winter spirit leaf that could allow me to cross the lofty river. It was also because of these memories that I learned about the situation in the immortal region. Although all of this happened in the ancient times, the original Flowing Flame clan may have been no different from ordinary people like me. However, I still want to find my clansmen. This hexagon sword is actually the cornerstone of this immortal region. It is also the key that seals the bloodline memories of our clansmen. Only it can awaken the memories of our clansmen. Now you should understand why I must obtain this sword, right? Sun Shu finished speaking in one breath. He sucked in a deep breath and looked at the trio anxiously. *CK. Shunning, you foodie, at least leave some food for me, right? Aren't you afraid of bursting to death by eating so much? I saved it for you. Keep your sister. Other than green peppers, chives, and garlic, is there anything else in this bowl? Where's the meat? Don't be picky. How dare you say that? Wait. I-Ching, you bootlicker. Put down that pastry. I made it. *CK. The three of them were fighting for food in full swing. From the beginning to the end, no one cast a glance in their direction. Sun Shu. He vaguely felt as if something had snapped in his mind. Flip's table. For all, Ngungo, was he even listening? At least show some respect. He must be blind to want to be honest with these people. This trip to Yufeng Immortal Region took only 1.5 months. They came out early, because their storage bags were full. Considering that it would take more time to go back and buy more, Lone Moon had no choice but to go back. Before they could cross the Miaoshui River, they saw a row of people standing by the river, looking in their direction. Fellow Immortally, you came out quite quickly. Immortal Emperor Gu Yu smiled kindly as he walked up to them. It was obvious that he had not left for the past month. He had been waiting for them to come out. He glanced at I-Ching and paused. Looks like you've gained a lot from this trip. The sword chi around him had actually increased by so much. Immortal Emperor. I-Ching nodded in greeting. I wonder if you have any news about the hexagon sword or the divine artifact? He asked anxiously. Both. He answered honestly. What? Gu paused, not understanding what he meant. Exalted Emperor Gu. Before he could ask, Sun Shu took a step forward. Instead of asking him, why don't you ask me directly? Gu frowned and asked tentatively, what do you mean, young Emperor Sun? What I mean is... Sun Shu smiled. The hexagon sword is already mine. Exalted Emperor, you don't have to send sword immortals into search for the sword for you anymore.
What?
Go Yu's face contorted, but he recovered quickly. You really found the hexagon sword. That's right. I didn't expect to be so lucky. With a flick of his wrist, a small golden sword appeared in Sun Shu's hand. It was the six-joint sword. Go Yu's expression darkened. He took a few deep breaths, as if trying to suppress his anger. After a while, he gritted his teeth and said, "Congratulations, young Emperor Sun." Although his cultivation level was higher than Sun Shu's, Sun Shu was a sword immortal. Now that he had two divine artifacts, he might not be Sun Shu's match. He could only swallow his anger. Turning back to look at I Ching, he said with a half-smile, "I didn't expect some people to be so useless. To think that I was filled with anticipation." Then, without waiting for a response, he snorted, waved his hand, and flew away with the group behind him. It was as if he did not want to look at them again. Shining, who had just taken out the repaired myriad sword box. They've already left. Should she give it to them or not? Forget it if you don't want it. Lone Moon immediately took the myriad sword box from her and stuffed it back into his storage bag. He had been afraid that I Ching would not be able to explain himself, so he went back to pick it up and asked Sun Shu to repair it, intending to give it to the immortal emperor. This saved him a lot of trouble. Although divine artifacts could only be used by young emperors and above, they could still be used to dismantle the heavenly firestone. It would be a waste not to take it. "You'd better leave this place quickly," Sun Shu reminded them. "Although Guyu knows that the hexagon sword is in my hands, he's always been petty. You've embarrassed him. He won't let you off so easily. What's more, you're on their turf." Sun Shu stopped mid-sentence, as if thinking of something. "Why don't you move to my Shandong immortal abode?" "No thanks. The environment there is quite good." Lone Moon rejected the offer. There were no natural business opportunities like the invincible sect anywhere else. What's more, with the cheat, they were not afraid of the immortal emperor's tricks. "But I'm afraid we'll have to trouble young Emperor Sun in the future." "All right, it's good that you know what to do." Sun Shu turned to look at Shining, who was sitting lazily beside him. He had the same thought. "You've helped me a lot this time. If you need anything, feel free to look for me." Lone Moon's eyes flashed. "Then I'll thank young Emperor Sun in advance." He cupped his fists and bowed. Turning to the other two, he said, "Let's go home." Xin-Ing was just about to step forward when her clothes tightened. "Master, I might not be able to." I Ching's expression changed. In a low voice, he said, "I can't suppress my immortal qi. I might be about to break through." Shining, Lone Moon, son of A. B** TC. Chapter 145. 3 months later. Siyu greets sect master and 2 elders. Siyu walked into the back hall, looking travel-worn. She bowed to the few of them. "Hey, little green." Shining waved a hand in greeting out of habit. Siyu's eyes lit up. Her tired face brightened. "You're back?" Lone Moon glanced at her. "How was it? Did everything go well?" "Yes." Siyu nodded. She took out a storage bag from her side and handed it over. "I've completed the task that Elder asked me to do. Exalted Immortal Shu asked me to pass this to Elder." "What?" Shun-Ing asked curiously. She had not seen Little Green for a few days. Father Nyo had sent her out. "The rest of the payment," Lone Moon answered. He opened the storage bag. A white light flashed out. The few of them were almost blinded by the immortal stones that were stuffed into the bag. This so much. Shining and his pauper friends were all stunned. "Didn't I give Shu Jiang a few talismans to auction?" Lone Moon used his divine perception to confirm that there was no mistake. He kept the bag. Looking at the time, he should have sold a portion of them. "That's why I sent Siyu to collect the rest of the payment." Father Nyo indeed. Those few air talismans that he sold were really sold, and it looked like they were not cheap. Lone Moon suddenly thought of something. He turned to the person beside him and said, "I Ching, The array that I asked you to set up around the demonic chi to counter divine perception. Have you done it? I Ching nodded. He poured a cup of tea for Shining. I set it up yesterday. That's good. This way, he could let the first batch of people who bought the talismans enter the demonic chi to train. What's more, that area was isolated by an array. It would not allow immortals who entered to disturb the cultivation of the sect's disciples. It would also not expose the truth about the demonic chi. What's more, that array was taught to I Ching by Sun Shu. Ordinary people would not be able to break through it. Oh yes, has Yu Hong returned? Lone Moon suddenly thought of something else.
See, you shook her head.
I did not meet Senior Sister on my way back. Lone Moon counted the time. Indeed, it was not time to return yet. He let Siyu rest, and was about to discuss the matter of demonic chi when he realized that the two people beside him were already happily discussing the matter of additional meals. We have money. Chef, we can start preparing the afternoon tea. Master, what do you want to eat? Anything is fine, like shredded melon, diced pheasant, mixed jellyfish, asparagus, stir-fried winter bamboo shoots, slices of magnolia, mixed mandarin duck, braised fish heads, and so on. Yes, master. No problem, master. Lone Moon. These two prodigals. Shangdong Immortal Residence. What did you say? The corner of Sun Shu's mouth twitched. He looked at the woman in front of him, who looked very mature. For a moment, he thought he had heard wrongly. Who told you to come here? I am the eldest disciple of Invincible Sect. Yu Hong stepped forward and cupped her fists again. Elder Lone Moon of my sect asked me to come. Sun Shu's expression darkened. Say that again. Why did he ask you to come here? Yu Hong's expression did not change at all. She repeated what she had just said unhurriedly. My elder said that young Emperor Sun is kind and generous. He promised that if our sect had any problems, we could look for him. But our sect does not lack anything except for a batch of immortal weapons. Our sect is very sorry to let young Emperor work so hard. So we will prepare the materials for refining weapons ourselves. Please, young Emperor, help us refine a few immortal weapons. You call this a few? Do you think I don't know how to count? Sun Shu pointed at the storage bags on the table and almost threw them back at her face. The materials for a few immortal weapons in your sect need to be stored in dozens of storage bags. Don't think I don't know. That's all the materials you dug up in the immortal territory. Thank you, young Emperor. Yu Hong bowed again. Get lost. Sun Shu glared at her. Indeed, this disciple of Invincible Sect was as annoying as those three people. I am not a blacksmith for free. If you want immortal weapons, find someone else. Yu Hong glanced at the storage bags on the table. Unexpectedly, she did not insist. She stepped forward and picked up the bag. Our elder said that if young Emperor is not free, there is no need to force yourself. Sun Shu looked at her in surprise. She was giving up so quickly? This was not like those little rascals' personality. But she added respectfully, our Invincible Sect does not force others to do things against their will. We are not ungrateful people. Was she scolding him? Our elder also said that he is very grateful for young Emperor's help in the immortal territory. He will personally visit with our sect master to congratulate young Emperor on your reunion with your people. Was this a threat? This was definitely it. I will take my leave. Come back. Sun Shu felt the veins on his forehead throbbing. He gritted his teeth and snatched the bag of materials from her hands. Gritting his teeth, he said, I'll refine. Damn it. The point was that he was really being threatened. Anyone but Shunning could do it. Thank you, young Emperor. Yu Hong hurriedly thanked him. Suddenly, she took out a booklet from her side and handed it over. My elder said that this is the list of immortal weapons that you need to refine. You just have to follow the numbers on it. Sun Shu subconsciously took it, but he didn't hold it properly. The other end of the booklet fell with a whoosh, and instantly pulled out a list that was a few meters long. On the list, there were thousands of weapons names written in tiny characters. Yu Hong. Sun Shu. He could vaguely hear a snapping sound in his head. A moment later, get lost. A roar reverberated through the entire Shandong immortal abode, spreading for hundreds of miles. Something strange had happened in the immortal realm recently. Exalted Immortal Shu's treasure tower would auction a few spirit transmission talismans every few months. It was said that through these talismans, one's divine perception could be sent to a holy land. Inside the holy land, one's divine perception would be able to improve rapidly, be it in terms of cultivation, immortal techniques, state of mind, and divine perception. It did not matter what cultivation one had. This news caused an uproar among the immortals, especially after the first batch of immortals who had entered the Holy Land came out. A few of them did indeed improve their cultivation. There were even immortals who had not improved in 10,000 years who broke through to the next realm. In an instant, the news spread throughout the entire country of Chongzhen. Everyone rushed to the treasure tower, hoping to get a spirit transmission talisman that could lead them to the Holy Land. Unfortunately, this talisman was very rare. Every few months, or even half a year, only a few would be auctioned at the treasure tower. Moreover, the price would rise. Each talisman could be sold for hundreds of thousands. Millions of supreme-grade immortal stones were still hard to get. Because of this, the immortals all felt some resentment towards the treasure tower, who had the source of this talisman. But there was nothing they could do. There were also people who wanted to find the Holy Land, but no matter how hard they looked, they could not find its exact location. Apart from the people of Invincible Sect, whose cultivation levels rose rapidly and whose hands were cramping from counting money. Chapter 146. Lone Moon touched the increasingly full sect storeroom and smiled like a professional profiteer. Even the shock of I Ching's breakthrough to Exalted Immortal faded a lot. He was in a rare good mood. He waved his hand and said, "From now on, I'll approve all your requests for supper." He thought that he would hear someone cheering, but there was only silence behind him. He frowned. "What's wrong? There's supper. Why aren't you?" He stopped speaking and looked at the person beside him. Only then did he realize that Xining, who had been eating just now, had fallen asleep on the table. He could hear her light breathing. It can't be. This fellow could even fall asleep while eating now. She's improved. Lone Moon did not mind. He casually sent a voice transmission to I Ching in the kitchen, asking him to send her back to her room. He turned and went back to his business in the Holy Land. Recently, the disciples' cultivation levels had risen very quickly. Most of them were Earth Immortals with immortal bones. Even his cultivation level had risen to Mystic Immortal because he frequently went in and out of demonic qi. Sun Shu had also sent more than half of the immortal artifacts over. It was the busiest time. But he did not expect that Xining would not wake up for a few days after she fell asleep. The person who would always appear at the back hall punctually when it was mealtime had not appeared for a few days already. Even when he sent food into the room, she still did not respond at all. Will Master be all right? I Ching's brows were knitted together as he looked worriedly at Xinying's room. What can happen to her? Lone Moon rolled his eyes. He thought for a moment but still asked, "How long has she been like this?" 5 days. So long. Then did she say anything to you the day she fell asleep? Although Xining was lazy, she was not stupid. In fact, she was more sensitive than the average person. If she discovered something, she would definitely have left some hints. I Ching thought for a moment, then shook his head.
No.
She was no different from before that day. No, then she should be fine. Lone Moon heaved a sigh of relief. You also know that although she is lazy, she is actually very smart. If something really happened, she would definitely say it. What's more, didn't she sleep for 2 days in a row before? But Sect Master has slept for too long this time. Yu Hong took a step forward and suggested hesitantly, "Why don't we try to wake Sect Master?" I Ching and Lone Moon paused. It was a good idea, but who called? I Ching, Lone Moon, Yu Hong. A while later, cough. Well, maybe she was just too tired. Lone Moon laughed awkwardly. When we were in Yufeng Immortal Region, there were a few days where we didn't even have a day or a night. It's normal for her to catch up on sleep. It should be, right?
But
More than half a year had passed since the incident in the Immortal region. Although Yu Hong had some doubts, she could only accept this answer. The sect leader was so powerful, who could scheme against her? Perhaps he was just too sleepy? Only I Ching, who was at the side, clenched his fists and stared at the room for a while. As he walked towards the door, he suddenly reached out and pushed the door open. I Ching. Lone Moon was shocked. Do you want to die?
Ha. Ha.
He looked into the room. Strangely, the person lying on the bed had not been woken up. Only the sound of shallow breathing could be heard. She still looked like she was in a deep sleep. Master, it's time to eat. I Ching walked to the bed and pushed the person on the bed. Shinning still did not respond. I made your favorite meat dishes. There's stir-fried crab, steamed dacha, assorted immortal rice, toad fish, braised ribbon fish, spicy wild chicken. He listed a whole bunch of dishes, but the person on the bed still did not respond. Even her breathing did not change. For no reason, panic surged in his heart. His head was buzzing. His hands by his side unconsciously trembled. Master. Lone Moon then realized that something was wrong. His expression changed. Something really happened. He hurriedly walked into the room and reminded I Ching, who was obviously panicking. Quick, check her pulse. I Ching paused, then reacted. He immediately grabbed one of the person's hands and checked her pulse. He separated a bit of immortal chi to check, but found nothing out of the ordinary. He hurriedly tried a few more times, but still did not find anything out of the ordinary. How is it? What's wrong with being a foodie? Lone Moon asked. I don't know. I Ching shook his head. How could it be? Let me see. Lone Moon snatched the person's hand and checked her pulse. His expression darkened. Indeed, there was nothing wrong. He gripped the jade flute in his hand impatiently. After thinking for a moment, he turned to the person behind him and said, Yu Hong, go to Shandong Immortal abode quickly. Perhaps it was because their cultivation levels were too low to check. Don't ask young Emperor Sun to come. Tell him it's urgent. Forget it. I'll go. He turned to leave, but I Ching beside him was one step ahead. I'll go. In a flash, he flew out. Fortunately, because of the immortal artifact forging incident, Invincible Sect and Shandong Immortal Abode had already set up a transportation array. In less than 5 breaths' time, I Ching had returned with Sun Shu. Hey, why did you drag me here? Sun Shu, who was in the middle of refining, looked unhappy. I'm telling you, if this immortal sword is broken, it's not my. He was halfway through a sentence when he saw the person sleeping soundly on the bed. He sucked in a deep breath and widened his eyes. He struggled out of I Ching's grip and hid behind the door in a flash. Even his voice transmission was trembling. F***CK, you two little bastards. Just say it if you want me dead. What happened to being friends? What did he mean by bringing him to the sleeping Shinning? Did he think that he had not been beaten up enough? Don't worry, she's fine. Lone Moon's mouth twitched. How traumatized was he? Come over and take a look at her. What's wrong? Sun Shu looked at them suspiciously. He still did not dare to come out from behind the door. Lone Moon assured him again and again, and he even demonstrated by shouting a few times. Indeed, the person on the bed did not respond. Only then did Sun Shu move out at the speed of a tortoise. After taking a few deep breaths, he finally checked the pulse of the person on the bed. After a while, he retracted his hand and lowered his voice out of habit. Her breathing is stable. Her pulse is calm. Nothing out of the ordinary. She's just asleep. Why did you call me here? To train his courage? Master has been asleep for 5 days. I Ching explained.
What?
That can't be. Sun Shu paused. Then, as if recalling something, he pointed 2 fingers at Xinying's forehead and sent a sliver of immortal chi into her. He wanted to check her divine perception, but found that it was empty. Shocked, he said, could this be the soul detachment technique? That can't be right. Before the others could react, Sun Shu rebutted. Her soul has not left her body. How could it be? What's the soul detachment technique? I Ching asked anxiously. The soul detachment technique is a type of soul-searching technique. Sun Shu explained. The soul-searching technique can extract a person's soul, but the soul detachment technique only allows the soul to leave the body. This technique is of little value. It can only make the person fall into a deep sleep. It does no actual harm to the body. That's why most immortals have never heard of it. I've only heard of it from the ancient memories I inherited. You're saying that Shining has been struck by this technique? Lone Moon asked. It's very likely. Sun Shu nodded. The strange thing is that her soul has not left her body. It's just that part of her divine perception is not in her body. But someone must have cast a spell on her. It looks like you're in trouble. Everyone's expressions darkened. I Ching's face darkened. He clenched his fists even tighter. Shun Ying's divine perception, who had been standing by the side. Did no one realize that she was just sleepwalking? Chapter 147. Shunning looked left and right. Seeing that they could not see her at all, she sighed. Just as she was about to return to her body, she heard a strange sound. It was a very soft sound. She could not tell what it was. She paused and floated out of the door, subconsciously. No one in the room felt anything. I Ching frowned and looked at Sun Shu anxiously. How can we wake Master up? Her divine perception has just left her body. It's not a big deal. Sun Shu thought for a moment and said, if we want her to wake up, we have to wait for her divine perception to return on its own or find the person who cast the spell. But divine perception can travel thousands of miles in an instant. We have to wait for her to return. At once, they thought of a certain someone's bad sense of direction. They exchanged glances, and their expressions darkened.
Cough.
Let's talk about the person who cast the sorcery. Lone Moon pursed his lips. For the past 6 months, Shun Ying has never stepped out of Invincible Sect. Of course, there were no outsiders either. Who could cast the sorcery on her? It may not be recent, Sun Shu said in a low voice. The soul-leaving spell is very simple. It does not need to be cast in person. It can be cast with talismans, tools, or anything with immortal chi. Think carefully. Before she returned, did she come into contact with any strangers or objects? Objects. The two of them turned to look at Sun Shu. Why are you looking at me? It's not the winter spirit tree. Sun Shu glared at the two of them. If I was the one who cast the spell, why would I come here? Besides, didn't you pluck the winter spirit tree yourselves? She did not touch anything except for a meal in Upper Capital. And I ate that meal too. Lo Moon really could not remember when she was cast. I Ching suddenly thought of something. No, there's something else. What? The winter spirit leaf. I said it wasn't me. Sun Shu panicked and was about to explain. I Ching took out a leaf that was beginning to turn yellow from the storage bag beside him. This was given to me by Immortal Emperor Guyu. Only Master, and I have touched it. Sun Shu's expression darkened. He quickly gestured for I Ching to put the leaf on the table. He formed a few hand seals and sent them toward the leaf. There was a flash of light. The originally slightly yellowed leaf suddenly turned black from the center, like a piece of paper that had been dripped with thick ink. In a moment, the entire leaf had turned black. Even the table was covered in a layer of black. This leaf has been poisoned with Brahma underworld poison. Sun Shu's expression changed. That was a type of poison that targeted the immortal physique. A person who was poisoned could only live for at most 4 months before this poison would directly enter their immortal bones. It was an extremely sinister type of poison. He hurriedly looked at I Ching. But you, why? How could he be fine? Lone Moon was also shocked. That day when they left the Yufeng immortal domain, Immortal Emperor Gu was clearly very angry that they did not get the 6 Unity Sword. But for the past 6 months, he had not done anything to Invincible Sect. Originally, he thought that he was holding back a big move, but he didn't expect that he had already planned everything. She had given I Ching this piece of winter spirit leaf from the very beginning because she didn't want him to live. What he didn't expect was that I Ching had a natural sword embodiment, which meant that he was immune to all poisons. It's him. He cast a spell on Master. I Ching clenched his fists, his veins popping out. His entire person seemed to be enveloped by anger. In an instant, he condensed an immortal sword. Wait, I Ching. Don't rash move. Before Lone Moon could finish speaking, I Ching's figure flashed, and he was already flying out. Holy shit. Come back here. He immediately chased after him, but found that I Ching was already gone. Lone Moon suddenly felt like cursing. He had been a brainless chef for so long that he almost forgot that I Ching was a person who hated evil. What's more, the person lying there was shunning. It would be strange if he didn't go crazy. What to do? What to do? After thinking about it, Lone Moon hurriedly entered the house, grabbed Sun Shu, and chased after him. Quick, quick, quick. Let's go together. We have to get him back. He can't beat Guyu.
Why?
Isn't that obvious? That's an immortal emperor. Not to mention how many immortals there are. Even if he can challenge those above his level, he's just an exalted immortal. How can he beat an immortal emperor who's 2 realms higher than him? Sun Shu paused and looked back at Lone Moon strangely. You don't know? Know what? To become a young emperor, one has to go to the Emperor Ascension stage. So, when he broke through, he suppressed his cultivation level to that of an exalted immortal. In fact, he's already a young emperor.
What?
With a sudden stop, Lone Moon almost fell off the sword. Mother Ker. At that moment, at the foot of Invincible Sex Mountain, Shining looked in front of her. The demonic chi surrounded Invincible Sect. She wasn't sure if it was an illusion, but she felt that the demonic chi today seemed a little fatter. She instinctively took a step closer. The black fog in front of her suddenly shook, as if it was about to dissipate. Why are you shaking? Shining looked at the demonic chi, speechless. She hadn't done anything yet. She walked in directly. The thick black fog seemed to have met its natural enemy. It immediately dispersed, revealing a clean space. Before she could react, the sound came again. Only then did she realize that it was a sobbing sound. He saw a small figure squatting under a withered tree not far away. His hands were hugging his knees, and his head was buried between his legs. His small body was trembling, as if he was scared out of his wits. From time to time, he would cry softly. A child? Where did she come from? No wonder the demonic chi was acting so strangely today. It had done something bad and was bullying a child. Hey, child. She walked over and called out. The small figure trembled and then slowly raised her head, revealing a face full of black chi. This child looked like a ghost. Traces of black chi floated out of her face. It was so thick that she couldn't see her features clearly. The demonic chi around her was too thick. She didn't notice it at first, but on closer look, it wasn't just her face. Her entire body was emitting that black chi continuously. No wonder the demonic chi surrounded her. It was treating this child as its own kind. Big sister? The child stopped crying. She seemed to have just realized that the black chi around her was gone. Surprise flashed across her eyes. She looked at Shining timidly, then looked at her with vigilance and anticipation. Big sister, are you the ghost servant who came to take me away? What the hell? Little friend, why are you here? Only Invincible Sect disciples and Father Nyo's customers entered the demonic chi. This child was obviously not from either side. I don't know. She shook her head and looked at the black demonic chi around her. She trembled before continuing. They said, I'm a jinx who will only harm people, so they all hit me. It hurts. It hurts. Shun Ying's expression darkened. What the hell? They said that it would be better if I died. In the end, I came here. She seemed to have thought of something. She looked at Shining curiously and said, Big sister, are you dead too? What nonsense is this little brat talking about? What a coincidence, me too. She pulled the corner of her mouth and gave her a cautious smile. She looked around fearfully. Is this where we go after death? But here, it's so cold. Shunning then realized that this child's body was translucent. She was really a ghost. Were there ghosts in the immortal realm too? And she even floated here? How troublesome. She should leave this to Father Nyo. Hey, little brat. Shunning waved at her. Come here, I'll take you out. Really? She was stunned. She looked at Xunying's hand, but still stood up obediently. Won't it not be cold outside? Yes. Shunning nodded. She then took Xunying's hand. Thank you, big sister ghost servant. How did she know that she was a ghost servant? The corner of Xunying's mouth twitched. She was about to fly towards Invincible Sect when a white light flashed beneath her feet. An array was formed.
Ha!
Before she could see them clearly, the two ghosts had disappeared from where they had been standing. Chapter 148. In the blink of an eye, the two of them were already standing in an unfamiliar room. The room was not big, but there were 4 or 5 people standing there. They looked to be young and older women, and they were all busy. From time to time, there were a few encouraging words such as, "Come on, it's coming out soon," "Work harder," and so on. It seemed to be a delivery room. Sister Ghost Servant, thank you for sending me off. The little ghost suddenly let go of her hand. She already said that she was not a ghost servant. Then I'll leave first. The little ghost smiled at her, and suddenly her figure flashed. She drilled into the stomach of the pregnant woman on the bed and disappeared. In the next moment, the sound of a baby crying filled the entire room. It's coming out, it's coming out. Shunning finally reacted. Could this be reincarnation? She was just dreaming. Could it be that she had really become a ghost servant? Straight face, she looked around and floated out, only to find that she was in a thatched cottage, and there was a small courtyard outside. Further outside was a very wide field, and there were people working in it. Since she had nothing to do, Shunning wandered around the small village. After walking around, she finally found a problem. That array seemed to have sent her directly to the mortal world. This distance was really not a normal distance, and she did not know if it was an illusion, but she felt that time seemed to pass very quickly here, as if it was changing every minute. The little ghost that came with her had turned from a baby to a little girl in just a few days, and she had grown to the height of her waist. But after reincarnation, she had forgotten about the past, and like the others, she could not see her. Even the original black aura around her had disappeared. After all, they had exchanged a few words, so Shunning naturally paid more attention to her. But with one look, she saw a life full of ups and downs. For the first time, she knew that a person could be so unlucky. This little girl's life could be summed up with one word: unlucky. As long as she went out, she would either fall into a ditch or fall down a hill. No matter how flat the road was, she would step on water. No matter how small the forest was, she would encounter ferocious beasts. She would choke when drinking water, and she would fall while sitting in the house. Her life was like a pantomime, falling every 3 seconds, falling every 5 seconds. Moreover, this kind of bad luck spread. As long as someone was within 5 feet of her, they would definitely be implicated by her. They would either be pulled into the ditch or rolled down the slope. Even her relatives were the same. It was supposed to be a good year, but only her family had no harvest. Even though he lived in the innermost part of the village, he was visited by thieves every month. If it rained, it would flood her house. If a volcano erupted, it would burn her house. If it collapsed, it would bury her house. She was like a walking plague, bringing bad luck wherever she went. Shunning glanced at the little girl at the side, who was standing on her tiptoes and stretching out her little hand, desperately trying to reach the fruit on the tree. Shunning sighed. What an unlucky child. Thus, she reached out her hand and raised the fruit that she could only touch with her fingertips a little higher. For all, hee, I just can't reach it. The little girl's originally red face turned pale instantly. Looking at the fruit that she had no hope of reaching, she pouted, and her eyes became misty. She looked like she was about to cry. This jinx is here again. Suddenly, a young male voice came from behind her. The little girl trembled in fear and turned around in horror. She saw a little fatty running out from behind her. Compared to her messy hair and dirty face, he was dressed very neatly. He was pouting and pointing angrily at the little girl. He turned around and shouted a few words behind him. Instantly, a few children of his age ran over from the side path. They looked at the little girl under the tree maliciously. He started to criticize her with every word. My mother said that she's a jinx, a monster. She's the best at harming people. No wonder her parents don't want her anymore. I saw it just now. She wanted to steal the fruit on the tree. She won't harm the fruit trees too, will she? What if they don't bear any fruit in the future? Hit her. We can't let her harm the fruit trees. That's right. The fruit is ours. Hit her. The more they talked, the angrier they became. They rushed towards the little girl. No, I didn't. She was even more afraid now. She could no longer hold back her tears. She took a few steps back. She wanted to escape, but she tripped over a tree root and fell to the ground. Stop her. Don't let her get away. The few children rushed over immediately. Some even bent down to pick up the stones on the ground. They were about to throw them at the little girl. Shinning frowned and silently stretched out a leg. Hit.
Aya.
The leader, the little fatty, suddenly fell forward and landed heavily on the ground. A bump the size of a fist appeared on his head. The little fatty was stunned for a moment. Perhaps it was because of the pain, but he let out a loud cry. The others were shocked. They looked at the little girl who was still on the ground in front of them, and then at the little fatty. It's her. It must be her. She's harming people again. Beat her too. Bam. Another child, who wanted to rush forward, tripped and fell to the ground as well. Following that, there were a few more bangs. The children who surrounded them all fell into a ball. Monster. Only then did the few of them realize the danger. They did not dare to rush forward anymore. As they retreated, they looked at the little girl in fear. She really is a monster. Run. In the blink of an eye, the few of them who were initially aggressive ran away. Bullying children was indeed addictive. The unlucky little girl finally got up. She looked around blankly. She seemed to have thought of something. Then she turned and limped back. Shunning didn't think much of it. She didn't expect the little girl to sneak back to this remote tree that night. She took out half a sweet potato from somewhere and placed it on the ground. She then knelt down respectfully under the tree. You're an immortal, aren't you? She lowered her voice and said carefully to her surroundings, I heard from the big fatty's mother next door that as long as you are obedient, the immortal will protect you. The one who protected me in the day must be an immortal, right? She looked around excitedly, as if she was looking for something. However, she did not find anything. She kowtowed 3 times obediently. Thank you, immortal. I will come often to worship you. So. Her voice deepened. She became even more nervous. After a while, she squeezed out a sentence. Can you always protect me? After saying that, she kowtowed 3 more times, causing the stones on the ground to reverberate. I will be very obedient. Very obedient. She waited quietly for a while. Seeing that there was still nothing out of the ordinary, she left reluctantly. Shinning. She looked at the half a sweet potato left on the ground. That's why she hated children. But this child seemed to be addicted to giving things. What's more, there was no one else in her house. Every night, she would come to the tree. Sometimes, she would put half a sweet potato. Sometimes, she would put half a radish or a bunch of unknown flowers. This night was even weirder. She brought a rock that was as tall as her calf. She even used a knife to carve something on it. Immortal. I heard from others that you have to write your name when worshipping immortals. Otherwise, you won't be able to receive them. It wasn't easy for me to catch a fish. I learned these words from Brother Dejun. In the future, you can receive my offerings. With that said, she put down a bunch of flowers and kowtowed 3 more times. Shin-ing then saw the words written on the rock, Immortal who protected me. She had set up a tombstone for her. The Mother ***. The child seemed to want to say something more. Suddenly, the ground shook. The originally dark sky suddenly shone with thousands of rays of light. The entire sky was bright. Something fell from the sky. With a loud bang, it landed on the top of a mountain not far away. What the hell? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.